All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Today's the Town of Dewey Beach Town Council meeting, as well as a workshop on our budget. It's being held at Dewey Beach Life Saving Station, as well as via Zoom. It is Friday, January 19th, 2024, and it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. With that, I'd like to convene the Town Council meeting and workshop. Start with the opening ceremonies with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please remove any hats, stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing is roll call. Commissioner Bauer. Present. Commissioner Gibbons.
Here.
Commissioner Jasinski.
Present.
Commissioner Persinger.
Here.
And myself, Mayor William Stevens, is here. So we have a quorum and we have the roll call. Before we jump in, actually, you know what? I'll have my comments with the updates and announcements. That's fine. Before I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, I'd ask that number 3, which has to do with the U.S. Wind and the community benefit, that we have that as a flexible part of the conversation, only because Mike Dunmeyer from U.S. Wind will actually be here, but he's also in Rehoboth. So after he finishes Rehoboth, he's going to come here somewhere probably 2:30. So it might be right on time. It might be a little bit late, but if we needed to go from 4 to 3. So with that, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Updates and announcements. Town Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple updates and announcements. It may take a little longer than normal, but I just want to go back and review the work that's going to be done on Reed Avenue on the Bay side, reference to continuing flooding that we have there during high tides. Infrastructure met, and it was a unanimous vote. Former Mayor Dale Cook actually made the motion to accept Remington and Vernick's plan to address the flooding at the end of Reed Street. I had 2 actual architects come in and 2 engineering firms. One was Beacon and one was RV. They both presented to the infrastructure committee, and the decision was unanimous that RV would be the company to do the work, not only down on Reed Street, but also on Dickens Street and Collins Street when it came to the storm drains. They expect that work to be done sometime during the first week of February on material and on the tides. They need to have an extreme low tide during that time to start that work. Also, I've asked for an infrastructure meeting for February. Why? Because in March, we're going to have all the roads and streets in the town of Dewey Beach that are actually owned by the state. And that's everything from the south end, from Collins Street, all the way to the north end, which is Collins Street. Those streets are all owned by the state, and the state's coming in to repave those roads. They will mill them, and then they will repave them. But Jersey, Carolina, and Chesapeake are actually owned by the town. So that company that the state is using has said it would be $150,000 to do the first 2 blocks of those 3 streets. I will be putting in a request for CTF funds through DELDOT, but there's no guarantee with that. So I've asked for an infrastructure meeting so I can address the infrastructure committee and explain that to them and to see if they want to recommend that the funds from the town be used possibly to do that work on those 3 streets.
And when are they going to begin that, Phil?
So March 15th, pending
okay.
weather,
Right.
For the mix and the milling will start at the south end. And they expect that to be done by May 1st.
Okay.
All right, so it'll go through Easter, and there will be some inconvenience on some of the streets. But again, the state owns those streets, majority of the streets. So a town hall update. So the town hall update is we are past the 60% phase on the new town hall. We are moving towards the 90% phase. So what does that actually mean? That means the electric, the HVC, all the mechanical stuff for the town hall has been pretty much settled. What's going to be done on the inside with the electrical, HVC, all that. Now what we're looking at is what's going to be done on the inside. So we're looking at polished concrete for some of the flooring, especially in the police station areas. That will save us a great sum of money. And then in other areas, looking at what they call this new luxury vinyl flooring that would go in like the kitchen areas. And then in the bathrooms, there would be some tile in the bathrooms. And then the other areas, especially the offices, would be carpeted. So we're looking at that now. They're getting us samples for that, and we're working through that now. The other 3 big things that keep us from getting to that 90 and that 100% is fire marshal review for permits, DNREC review, water conservation for permits, and the last one is the DelDOT, right? So we're still going through that review with GMB for those three. So until that actually happens, we won't get to the 90 or 100% phase for the new town hall, but we are moving in the right direction. When it comes to scheduling, we think it will go out to bid at the 100% towards the end of April. It'll go out to bid for about 30 to 45 days. We'll get those back. When we get those back, we'll review those with GMB and with Dave Naples, who will be the contractor representing the town for this project. We will look at those bids, and then we'll present the bids probably back here with the recommendations from GMB on the construction, and let the commissioners know what the estimates are for the build out, and then probably start the project September 15th. We do not want to start the project in the middle of summer. Right? There's a number of different things, plus our own town ordinances about construction during the summer. So that's where we are right now. And at the next meeting, I will have some renderings of the outside of the building that everybody will be able to see. We'll have those in the town hall, and I'll also release them to the media and put them on our town website so everybody can see those. As I continue, we have a meeting with DelDOT next week on the 25th at 10 a.m. And we'll be discussing that $6 million public safety project down Route 1 here. What they're mainly going to be looking at, that the engineers have put together, are the driveways that are no longer used as driveways. So when you're walking down the sidewalks and all of a sudden you're just tripping because there's this driveway entrance now that really doesn't need to be there. So they will be, that's going to be in phase one. We're looking at that. We're looking at continuing the bump outs that are not on all the corners, but on some. They're looking at those. And then also continuing what we call the Dewey Wave, which is in just the central part of town. They're going to extend that up at least to 1 and 1A, and then down south to Collins Street. So we'll be meeting about that. And then once they're done, we will ask them to come in for the February meeting to do a presentation. So you may ask them some questions about that. I attended the Rascal meeting this week. It focused on green energy during that meeting, wind farm, climate change, solar. They went through the whole thing. It was a good meeting with the folks there. Rascal, Danielle did a great job putting that on. Police department is unionized. I don't know, everybody should have seen the article that was in the Cape Gazette today. We're moving forward with that. We expect that to take place with the contract with the FOP over the next several months. And I think everything will work out well on that. Chief, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think we're moving in a positive direction.
And I think the comments in the paper are reflective of the town. So I'm looking forward to that. Jim Dedes, could you give an update on the 5G poles? And again, we have 3 of them that have moved up. We still have 2 of them. Jim?
Yes, the thing that we have left is St. Louis Street, and then we have an issue over, actually not an issue, a plan hopefully to have Collins Avenue, the pole that is currently on the dune, to be moved sometime before the summer. We're just waiting for Verizon to submit the packet. There's a small change in the packet. It has to go through CTC through our internet connection. And once that's done, we should be able to move along. We assume we should be able to process the paperwork, unless there's some underlying conditions that we don't know, probably in the next few weeks. I would say probably if they were to deliver it tomorrow or Monday, we should be able to the following week approve it and have them start relocating. So that's where we are on that. We also have asked for an update on the $232,000 original estimate they gave us. Haven't received it yet. I understand that we should be getting that shortly from, I believe, Bob McConnell, who's the government liaison to the town. Anyway, we're hoping to have this resolved and have the finances resolved as well.
Yes, so Mayor, that's an itemized list of what Verizon has with their charges so far to the town. We have paid nothing, but we want an itemized list when they give us that bill of what exactly they said they spent the money on before any bills are paid. Real quick, we're working on 3x5 cards. You know, they worked out really good last year with the lifeguards going up to folks that were drinking on the beach and saying, hey, we're glad you're here. Welcome to Dewey Beach, but you're drinking on the alcohol on the beach. You're not allowed to do that. Here's our town ordinance. You hand them the 3x5 card and you say, either remove your alcohol from the beach or we will be calling the police. So we're going to be doing on the flip side of that also about marijuana, right? It'll have the new marijuana legislation in there that, number one, if you're under 21, you can't possess it. If you're over 21, what the rules are, and you can't smoke on the beach anyway. And the same thing, we're gonna ask them to remove it off the beach, and if they don't, we'll be calling the police. So the front office has done a really good job working with the police department to develop those cards.
Okay.
And as Captain Fritchman said, they worked out really well for the lifeguards last year. The flowering or the bloom that came out of the marketing, we look forward to working with the marketing committee and those volunteers for that. This past October, the town planted over 400 bulbs in the middle of the Dewey Way down to Center Island, and we put over 3,000 wildflower seeds out. So hopefully that starts to bloom, and then when this group that's coming out of the marketing committee adds their plants throughout the town, it'll really
that's
improve
awesome.
what the Route 1 corridor looks like in town. We have 3 RFPs out right now. We have a banking RFP out. We have a beach rake RFP out right now, and then we have a landscaping RFP out. We're waiting for those results to come in. Center of the Inland Bays would like to come in and do a presentation also in February to talk about the Sunset Beach project, the living shoreline that we are doing down there on the bay. And that's all I have pending. Any questions from the commissioners?
Council?
And with that, sir, if I could turn it over to the chief.
Chief?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. All right, so today I'm going to go over our, basically our 2023 Police Department Annual Report at a glance. This PowerPoint and a detailed narrative is also going to be on the town site, so it gives a lot more detail and description of what we've accomplished this year. As of this week, I've been here 1 year, and we've done, had
That
great
was quick.
success. Yeah, it's gone by quick.
Happy anniversary, Chief.
Thank you. The department is moving in a great direction, and we've been very successful this year. So we hope to continue that for next year. All right, our Dewey Beach Police Department team. Each member of the police department team has taken on additional duties and responsibilities. The last 12 months of improvements and enhancements are because of the DBT team working tirelessly to achieve the objectives that I've set out. This has been a team effort. And I say team effort because it involves the police department, the town side, the commissioners, and the town manager. Everybody in this town, all the business partnerships, all the citizens have really helped us accomplish our goals and missions for this year. So I appreciate everybody's help. We have a new mission statement. It's clear, concise. It guides our officers to be guardians and protectors. And it instills pride and professionalism, and that is duty, honor, and community. And if you've noticed our new car designs, we have that on the vehicles. And I'm going to go ahead and read what those mean. Duty. Our officers are committed to both the legal and moral obligation to serve the public within the parameters of the United States Constitution, Delaware State Constitution, and federal and state court decisions that define our legal authority in everyday policing. Honor. In carrying out our duties, we will do so with adherence to what is right and lawful without partiality or prejudice. We will fulfill our obligation to the community we serve with honesty, integrity, and devotion. In community, we will establish, foster, and grow partnerships with our citizens, business owners, and visitors to work together in keeping our town safe, secure, and welcoming to all people. We have increased our officers' training. Through our employee interviews established through their interests and goals for their careers, we began using web-based programs in addition to in-person learning, such as the Police One software that we have. We've established a priorities list of training that was greatly needed. Supervisor training, leadership training, duty to intervene, de-escalation tactics and techniques. We began using untapped resources such as the FBI LEADA classes. For training highlights, all sworn patrol personnel are trained and certified as field training officers. And that's very important. We have 2 recruits in the academy now, and we also have all our seasonals that come in every summer. And having everyone be trained as a field training officer means they have the training and certifications to properly train and actually supervise people of lower rank and teach them how to actually do this job. So that was a big thing for us. We have 2 officers certified as firearms instructors, Sergeant Smith and PFC Planner. And the importance of that was when Lieutenant Hawker left and retired, we had no certified firearms instructors here through the state of Delaware, meaning we had to rely on other agencies to get with them, go to their ranges and use their instructors. Now we are self-sufficient, so we can be self-sufficient and train our officers on our own. Training highlights, FBI LEDA supervisor training, all promoted officers received that. They received de-escalation and minimizing force training, de-escalation and reasonable use of force, de-escalation strategies and techniques, and additional use of force training. So everybody received that. We've received internal investigations training, advanced search and seizure, media and public relations, liability training, developing leadership. I'm not going to read everything because it'll be online just to save time. Our agency attended in-person or completed web-based Police One training totaling 1,092 hours. That doesn't include firearms training or our recruits in the academy. That's just courses that our officers have actually went to and attended or taken online. We have introduced a new software called Skills Manager, and what that does is it accurately puts all officers' training, everything they've attended, plus their firearms training, all their certifications into a software system. So we have that available because that is something that you need to have as a police agency, and it needs to be a good system. So we've introduced that to our agency and are using that now. We have updated our uniforms. As you know, as you can see, we are wearing this blue uniform. It is a lower cost than our dress uniform. So we have dress uniforms that we still have for officers for funerals and court purposes and things like that. But this is the daily uniform. When I arrived here, the uniform was tan BDU style pants and polo shirts.
I'll be back.
Sorry, Chief.
No problem. This fabric it's light, breathable, and provides freedom of movement. It can be washed at home. It doesn't have to be dry cleaned. Yeah, we also got outer vest carriers that you can see the officers wearing in the back. They've been updated. We had a lot of officers actually wearing vests that were outdated and expired. Vests expire after 5 years. So that means they don't provide ballistic integrity as they should. So we were able to update everybody's uniforms. As you can see, they have their patches on them, they have their names and their ID numbers. So that's for transparency. When they come up to you, you can know who they are and what their ID numbers are. And as you can see, I like to wear my vest underneath, so I also have my name and ID number. So, you know, that's the one thing about in law enforcement, a lot of times people want to know your name and ID, and we clearly have it right on our uniform, so you know who you're dealing with. Implementation of the body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras were issued to all sworn personnel this year. It was funded by the state, and all of our seasonal officers also had body-worn cameras on, which was great. So everybody working the road had a body-worn camera on. Body-worn cameras are designed to increase transparency, ensure accountability, and enhance public trust by effectively using captured videos. Additionally, the body-worn camera footage can be used to highlight the realities of police work used in administrative and criminal investigation and improve training and policies. And here's, obviously, in the back they have it on, and as you see, there's a picture of it. All right, promotions of supervisors. When I arrived, obviously, we had to make some changes. We had some people retire and leave, and we had to make some changes within the agency. Sergeant Dempsey was promoted to lieutenant. He's second in charge. He's pretty much considered the deputy chief, and he's doing a phenomenal job. We brought in Colin Schmidt and promoted him to the rank of sergeant. Corporal Curtin went to the rank of corporal, and we had Gavin Vaughn promoted to the rank of corporal, and we brought in a communications supervisor, Melissa Cardamone. And with these additions, they made a big difference in our agency. Other key positions filled is I had to bring in a new administrative assistant, Jackie Kramer. She's like having 3 people. She does a phenomenal job. Matthew Planner in the back, we also brought him. He came to us as a lateral. He retired in Pennsylvania, so he's been a great asset in addition to the agency. We also elevated some of our part-time dispatchers to full-time. Joey Myers, Rebecca Lenhart, and Melissa Squire went from a seasonal dispatcher that we hired last summer to a full-time dispatcher. We have 2 officers in the academy, Dylan Dowling and Colby Butchert. They graduate March 1st. So they'll be on FTO for about 10 to 12 weeks. And hopefully before Memorial Day, they'll be out on their own and be able to be solo officers. So we look forward to having them with us. We added 3 new police officer positions. We still have 2 positions vacant at this time. And as you can see, here's our organizational chart. Obviously, I'm not going to read that out to you, but once again, if you want to look at it more, it's going to be on the website. We switched our schedule to the 12-hour shift. It increased the manpower on the street. It gave us the ability to schedule people for training. As I said earlier, all the training we've attended, a lot of officers needed a lot of training. So by having the 12-hour shifts, that allows us to send people to training, allows people to take a day off. We also, with our addition of our canine units, Corporal Curtin is working like a power shift, as I said he would when he got back with his patrol dog, to enhance the nighttime hours that are busier, especially when we go forward in the summer months. And we now have 2 officers on from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. at all times. So that's very important that we have 2 people on at nights. And they didn't have that all the time before. We've raised our agency's social media platform. Our Facebook is now active and vibrant. We try to keep the citizens and visitors updated on everything going around in DBPD. We still post significant arrests, but also highlight positive community interactions and significant accomplishments of the DBPD staff. In the near future, Lieutenant Dempsey is going to add Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, accounts for us to push out real-time updates, such as if we have to do a road closure or other things are going on around time. So we are working on that, and we are working on the police department's website, because it's a little bit of a disaster, but we're getting that figured out. We're actually, if you look at it now, it actually has my chief's message on there. So that's the first thing that's been added to it. We're working on community initiatives. We're trying to participate in more events. We plan on doing a public safety day in September with all of our neighbors, such as EMS, fire, it's things for the kids to do. So we're going to have a big day in September. So we'll be advertising that. We look forward to everybody showing up for that.
Chief, where will that be?
That's going to be, we're working at having it at the Lions Club lot.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to post it, and once we get all the details worked out. If you have seen it around, we've added the Polaris UTV, and that's been a great asset because that's great for winter too. It's all enclosed, it has heat and air, it has lights, and it's great because we can take it on the beach, and we have been using it year round. We use it to help out with events and things, and it's a lot better than the old Gator. Our old Gator, if you're wondering why we replaced it, it had stopped working. I believe it was, what was wrong with it, Cliff?
It was in the transmission.
Yeah, it just stopped working. Yeah, so basically when we switch to this will be year round. The seasonals will use it, but full-time officers are using it in the winter as well. We updated our vehicle graphics. We wanted to increase our visibility to our citizens and visitors. We use larger reflective lettering for easy read and recognition. We've added the addition of rear reflective striping to reduce rear end collisions. And our new clear, simple design is a rebranding of the department. And there's going to be some pictures of that coming up here. We use traditional colors with easy to read, recognize markings. Our cars are either going to be black or white now. So we either buy them in black. Mostly we're going towards black vehicles, but you'll see both colors. And we have our mission statement on the side that I read to you at the beginning. We removed the tint from the windows. The only tint on the cars are going to be on the canines, and that's to help them with the heat when it gets really hot in the summer. You'll always see that on canine vehicles. However, we did remove that for better approachability, so you can actually see inside the cars, and the officers can be more approachable to you. So here's some pictures of our cars, our newly designed cars. That's actually mine. This is the lieutenant's car. And then we have our new canine vehicle. This is Canine Smoke's car. And then we actually have one Ford Explorer Hybrid that we got this year. And this is showing the rear design. It's been known to reduce 40% of rear end collisions. That's why I did that. And if you see that, you'll see it on the EMS vehicles and things like that. They put on the back so they don't get rear ended, and it does help. And we applied for a grant. So we will be adding 2 e-trucks. It's from Energize Delaware, a grant we got for $130,000. So we'll be having 2 F-150 e-Lightning trucks. And then we'll have the charging stations at the station that the grant is also paying for. And those are supposed to arrive in March, be outfitted. So you'll probably see them out there this summer in April. So all these vehicles that we've gotten so far is replacing. We have vehicles that are up to 13 years old that we've been trying to replace and update our fleet. We relaunched our mountain bike unit this summer. I'm sure if you've been in Dewey, you saw the seasonals on the mountain bikes. The good thing is one of my recruits in the academy, he was one of our certified mountain bike officers. So as a full-time officer, you're going to see him out there on the bike. And I'm trying to convince some of my other guys to get on the bikes too. So hopefully I can do that, because they do have to attend a week-long, very rigorous mountain bike training course, and it's not easy. Here's some more of the guys. All right, so the other thing we did when I arrived is for the seasonals, we provided them with new uniforms and utility belts, because what they had was a mess. A lot of the belts are falling apart. The uniforms, I was told in the past, a lot of times they only got one set of uniforms. Well, they work 5 days a week. They were falling apart. So what we did is we invested in them and we got some nice, so everybody looks professional. I'm sure you saw them out there. They did. They looked really good this year. Professional uniforms, and we actually had a really good group of seasonals. We also bought them jackets. They didn't have jackets, so they actually got some jackets, because there are days out there when they're out there up to 6 months, it gets cold and rainy. The great news is I've already offered jobs to 6 returning seasonals already as of last week. So we are well on our way to having our staffing for the summer. So we're going to have
Is that assumption accepted? They offer and accepted?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I already have 6 of them returning, so that's really good. So we have we've relaunched our canine program, as most of you know. We have 2 canine teams. We have Corporal Curtin and Canine Smoke. He's patrol and narcotics certified. He's 18-month-old Malahide. And then PFC Dylan Epke and Canine Jaspers, our other team. He's trained in narcotics, trailing, and article search. He's an 18-month-old German Shepherd. The canine handlers wear the olive drab uniforms to delineate them from the patrol officers. So you'll see them wearing the green. Here's a picture of Curtin and Smoke. As you can see, Smoke really loves Curtin. And here is a picture of PFC Epke and Canine Jasper. And I'm sure some of you have heard the story. We got Canine Jasper was acquired through the Canine Connect Highland Canine Grant. And our approach about getting him was that he's a very friendly dog. He was rescued. He was trained to do drugs and trailing and things, so he could be used in law enforcement. So he pretty much was a rescue. And we wrote a letter and we talked about Dewey Beach and how we thought he'd be a great fit for our town. And they awarded us the grant. This year we have we've applied for and expended $313,000 in grants. So those are grants that we've applied for to get the vests that you see the officers wearing, helmets, vehicle equipment, extra patrols, duty patrols, to run the camera systems in town, the canine vehicles, all kinds of stuff, and the 2 new e-trucks. All those are grants that we've applied for and that we've received, and we continue to apply for grants. Every time we get an opportunity, we do apply for grants to try to save money on the town and to improve our equipment and professionalism. The officers were also, another thing that was lacking was basically the ability for citizens and victims of crimes and stuff to reach officers. So all the officers were provided with a cell phone, which can also be used for evidentiary purposes. And they were given business cards so they could hand out their cards and stuff when they deal with citizens and complaints, so that people can reach them. So that was an important thing that we did. We revamped the evidence room. We added a dedicated computer with tracking software to maintain chain of custody and update property logs using a barcode scanning system. We went through the entire room and properly disposing of evidence and from adjudicated cases and unclaimed property. So in the past, we didn't have this system in place. So Lieutenant researched and found a good system that we could use and that we could really, we needed to fix. This was on the audit that our evidence room was a little bit of a mess. So he's been working on that with some of the other officers, and now everything is accounted for and logged into this new system and will be disposed of properly. We also enhanced the body armor, which I mentioned early. Another thing we got with the grants were the dropped-in armor plates that you could put for during an active shooter if you wanted an extra ballistic protection. So the officers have that. They also all have ballistic helmets, and they have non-ballistic face shields that were purchased with grants. And the shields are used, like if we had a riot or something in Dewey, people are throwing rocks at the officers, it protects their faces. And obviously the ballistic helmets, or if we were an active shooter and rounds are coming down, it protects their heads. We also increased our equipment as far as the breaching kits and tools if we needed to get into a residence or something. And all the officers have spring-loaded window breakers to get into cars if they need to in an emergency. And each vehicle now has a trauma kit, which they didn't have before, which is if someone gets shot, they actually have tourniquets, and they have different tools to help somebody with a gunshot until EMS arrives, which is very important. Our stats were captured only from it took us a while to get reorganized here, everything had to be updated. So our stats started from May through December. So my report has 8 months worth of stats. So the seasonal officer stats from May through November, they wrote up 702 parking citations, 233 civil, 100 criminal, and 129 arrests. Full-time officers were 1,925 calls for service, 493 parking tickets, 67 accidents, 16 DUIs, 67 criminal arrests, 64 warrant arrests. In 2023, our calls for service, we had 4,116 calls for service versus in 2022, calls for service were 2,150. And with that, I might add, if an officer calls out on something, that counts as calls for service. That's just not people calling on the phone asking us for help. Goals and objectives for next year. We're going to continue to enhance career development through training opportunities. We want to train an officer to conduct complex criminal investigations and assign a designated investigator. Of course, we want to fill our 2 police officer positions. We want to transition our weapons from the Glock 45 to the Glock 9mm pistol, which we're already working on. We have a grant that's funded that already. We're going to host a public safety fair in the fall. We're going to create the X, Twitter, and Instagram accounts for the police department, continue to update policies and procedures. We want to obtain a computer-aided dispatch system that helps our dispatchers, and we want to, which we're currently working on, update our department website. So a big thanks. I want to say the progress and improvements we have made are the direct result of the mayor and commissioners and town manager that have entrusted me to head the Dewey Beach Police Department and have given me their full unwavering support. And I want to thank all of you as well. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions for me? I know that was a little long. I tried to go as fast as I could.
You did great.
All right, thank you.
Chief.
Did a lot in 1 year. I can't believe it's already been a year.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things, as you were going through the presentation, I wanted just as clarification, you saw a lot of addition to new vehicles. It's one of the benefits of being a Dewey Beach police officer is that you get a take-home vehicle. It's not that we have all these cars just sitting over there from when we have 2 on. So yes. I just want to make that as a clarification. Before we get into...
Bill?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
For a question and a comment, first of all. The question is, there are 2 vacant positions. Assuming those are filled in the near term, is the cost of those positions included in the FY 2025 budget that we'll be talking about soon?
Yes, Commissioner Persinger, I can answer that. So what we did was actually one of those vacant spots, we actually budgeted for a corporal, which is, higher than a patrol, a PFC, a corporal, in case we get a lateral that comes in that's already satisfied to meet the chief's requirements. So that is in the budget. And then the other one is at a cadet coming in at approximately $58,000. So yes, to answer your question, they are both in the budget.
Great. All right, great. And my comment is, first of all, congratulations, Chief, on a year with the town.
Thank you.
And I know over the course of the last year, the town has asked for increased resources for the police department, and we have approved those. And I think, I'm probably one of the ones who's maybe first to say, do you really need that and can we afford it? But I would just have to say, looking at your report and all you've accomplished over the past year, it really was money well spent. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Any other questions from council before we move on? This comes to committee reports. Before we get to the committee reports, I want to just kind of reiterate a few things, and just to kind of some of you know me, some of you don't. I take this job seriously, but I do have a humor side of me, so I try to make it a little lightened from when we do have these meetings. The 5 commissioners, it's an unpaid volunteer position. and we give up our time to be here and to do these things, to move Dewey forward in a positive way. The agenda is built upon whether it's an individual, a business, a committee that comes forth, or a council member that comes forth with something they want to address, and therefore it gets on the agenda. It doesn't mean that we are for something or against something, but we want to have the opportunity for the community to be part of the conversation and to discuss it. I have some very specific comments about US Wind and the community benefits, but I'm going to wait until we get to that section of the agenda. But I just want you to know, this isn't, I will just want to put it out there because there could be misinformation of our intent. Our intent is to move things forward and do what we can for you guys. So that being said, if you have agenda items, if you have things that you would like for us to discuss, email me. Not here.
I don't email. I'm a dinosaur. I'm a different age.
So that's it from an updated announcement.
How do I get through to you if I don't email? Can I come talk to you
You can,
personally? That's how I communicate.
we can figure that out. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Committee reports. Gary,
Yeah, Climate Change Committee, as you probably know, we lost the chair of that committee. We do have another committee member who is willing to serve as chair, but we also lost a couple of other members as well. So the town did send out an email asking for additional volunteers. We do have a list of people who are interested in serving on the committee. So we just need to work through the process and get the committee reestablished and get working on some of the climate change issues again. I'm assuming you want me to continue with
Yes, sir.
any other reports? Okay. No report on the audit committee. Charter and Code had a very good meeting on Wednesday. They finished going through all of the proposed or just questions about various sections of the charter. So we'll put together a document that summarizes all of the recommendations with respect to those elements of the charter. And we can make that available for the town council meeting in February if there's room on the agenda for that. They also spent quite a bit of time talking about building permits and ways in which we might make that process more efficient, both for the town as well as for property and business owners. There's clearly room for some movement there. We're not sure exactly how much, but I think there's probably a very significant percentage of those permits for which the process could be much more efficient. And there wouldn't actually need to be a formal permitting process, but there may still be a need to track those projects because, as everyone knows, most of the town is in a FEMA flood zone. And because we participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, we have to be very careful about making sure that we issue building permits and conduct or monitor building activities in a way that's consistent with the regulations that FEMA has established. So that particular area is still under discussion. As I say, there is room for movement, but there's still some additional research that needs to be taken before the committee actually has some recommendations. That's all I have for committee updates.
thank you, sir. Commissioner Jazinski.
No updates. Our town manager gave a good update on the infrastructure stuff.
Commissioner Givings.
The investment committee is scheduled to meet on February 8th at 5 p.m. I believe the current chair will be resigning from that position. We will be looking for additional members and somebody willing to serve as chair.
Wonderful. Commissioner Barrow.
All right, budget, we just wrapped up and made some recommendations. We're going to talk about that later in our workshop, so I'm not going to waste everybody's time now talking about it. But it looks like the year turned out pretty close to exactly what we budgeted for. So from a financial standpoint, the town's in great shape and hitting its budget and not spending more than we bring in, which is how you're supposed to do it, right? And then as far as marketing, there's a couple projects going on there, Dewey and Bloom, that we had mentioned earlier, or town manager had mentioned earlier. Looks like a really good project. We're going to look for community volunteers. Remember many years ago, the Dewey Beach Civic League used to go around and plant flowers. So sort of like an old idea brought back to today's world. But we're trying to do it with the town participating in it as well. So maybe we buy we spend the money to invest to make the place prettier and then have the volunteers do the work. So I think it's a good way to get engagement from all the people that live here. Maybe have an ambassador for every street who's in charge of making their street the best looking one. But we'll have some fun doing it, no doubt, in a Dewey Beach kind of way. Next meeting for marketing is January 30th, and all are welcome to attend.
Thank you, Paul. One thing that I'm going to ask is that each of the liaisons work with your committees and with Kate to get a schedule drawn up. So we know exactly yet for the 24-25 season when those meetings are going to be, so that we don't have conflicts, so that we can have proper movement. So that's something that Kate will be reaching out for you guys to discuss. I'm going to ask for a motion on the approval of the minutes, but I believe that there's an amendment to the minutes. So I won't go too quickly, Gary. So I'll give you a chance. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All right. Discussion. Is there any changes to the minutes?
Yeah, there isn't really a change. This is on item 7. As I was reviewing the general code proposal that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I noticed that the language that was actually formally approved for changing the time period on which dogs are allowed on the beach, it differed from what we passed. In the amendment that you signed off on, you and the town manager signed off on, it says the ending time is Saturday rather than Sunday. And I think, it was pretty clear in the motion, and the minutes are correct, that we did have Sunday as the ending day rather than Saturday. The problem is it's still a little bit unclear. It's not entirely clear that I think what we meant was that prohibited period begins the Saturday of Memorial Day and ends through Sunday. The last day of that prohibition period is Sunday. So I think we're going to have a technical amendment to clarify that, just so we make sure that everybody understands what the rules are. But no correction to the minutes.
Great. So,
We can motion to approve.
motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, public comment. What will happen, consistent with what we've done with other meetings, is that this is a placeholder for if you have non-agenda items that you'd want to come up and discuss from a public comment perspective. But when we open up each agenda item, it'll be an overview by either somebody in town or one of the parties here. Then it will go for public comment, and then we'll have discussion. So I know that I should put US Wind on the agenda all the time so we get a lot of people to come in and see us. So when we get there, there'll be time enough for us to discuss those things. So is there anyone here for public comment for an agenda item, a non-agenda item?
Yeah, me.
What is your item? If you can, please go to the podium and your address here in town. And
I don't live in town.
still, please go to the podium, sir.
Okay.
So that people at home can hear.
I don't really need, okay. I've been a clammer since I was 12 years old in this bay. I support wind. I was going to give the commercial fishermen a raft of crap because they haven't killed anybody, right? The wind people have not killed anybody, right? They're just trying to get clean power.
Well, sir, I believe you're commenting on a US
Right.
on.
But hold on.
No. This is.
You have to understand, you have to listen to me or you're not going to
No,
understand.
not if you didn't listen to me. I asked that if you have any comments things that are not on the agenda.
Yeah, this isn't on the agenda. And what
When-
I'm trying to talk about is there's not a man in this room, evidently. Not me, not you, not even you guys. Because there's 350 Sussex Countyans that are dead. Nobody wants to do anything about it. Why not? Can somebody answer that for me? I'd just like to know. Now, who would kill 350 Sussex counties? Who would do that? Not me. I love people. I love Delaware. But there's a chicken plant that operates at Indian River. It killed my bay. I can't clam no more. Thanks a lot. Nobody has stood up with me. What am I, the only man left in this county? What's wrong with you people? I don't understand. And then on top of the chicken plant, we got Denrec doing the same thing. I got satellite pictures of the pipe that goes into Swan Creek. And Swan Creek empties into Indian River Bay. You know what? I think I've said enough. When you all get your heads together, and you're a real man, stand up to the chicken people, please. Oh, and one more thing. Sorry. I got arrested at your Rehoboth Bay Marina. You know why? I demanded that they have a sewage pump out. No, they didn't like that. No, sewage pump out for boats. No, you just dump it in the water. Isn't that what we do now? You just dump it in the water so I can swim around and catch my clams and everybody's poop. Call me when you need me. I live at 1733 Sweetbriar Road, Lewis, Delaware. Been here all my life. I survived being born at BB. BB, body bag. See y'all later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Let's take a breath. All right, in, out. Was the Peloton instructor do?
I don't think we have any jurisdiction over the chicken plants, do we?
All right, is anybody online for a non-agenda item public comment? Okay, not seeing any?
No one expressed anything in chat.
Okay.
So.
All right, with that being said, we'll move into the meat of the agenda. Number one, discuss possibility to approve a proposal from the general code for an editorial and legal review of the town code. Kate, can you give us an overview?
Sure. So we had touched on this at last month's meeting. We've reposted the proposal for everyone to look at. This was a suggestion put forth by General Code, who's worked with our online and maintained our code for quite some time now. They've recommended every 10 to 15 years you do a full legal and editorial review. There were some questions that I wasn't able to answer, so Lori Ann with General Code is joining us virtually just to go over any questions or details about the process.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lori Ann.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having us on the call. I'm glad we were able to work this out for you guys today. And I also have Deb Tyszynski. She's our managing editor for Code Projects. She is the expert behind all of the work that happens for the codes, like in this type of service. So I thought it would be best to serve you that if I am unable to answer the question, Deb is really the best person to answer questions when it comes to the editorial review, either one of the projects, whether we just update or recodify the whole code.
So I'll start off with some questions. Could you explain to me the process in terms of, is it a visual inspection, manual inspection? Are you using artificial intelligence or software to review our code and find where issues are? Just trying to, when we initially looked at it, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, we thought it was a very reasonable fee for something that we looked at that can take a lot of time. So can you just explain to me a little bit about your internal process and also the requirements for town hall in terms of the amount of hours that they're going to have to dedicate to?
Definitely.
I can
Deb
take
is gonna
that.
take that.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lorianne said, I'm Deb Tyszynski. I'm the managing editor for Code Projects. I do apologize. I don't have a camera today. I'm working at home because we got some bad weather up here. So I apologize for that. So to answer the question about what the process is for the editorial and legal analysis, there's no AI involved. It's an editor will read the code. That's basically where we start. We read through the code, read through the charter, and we're looking for a number of different things. So I did a little research on your code, and it was first put together back in 2005. That's the last time this kind of review was done by General Code. So it's been almost 20 years. And actually, the editor who worked on the initial code is still with us, and she would probably be working on your recodification, whichever you choose to do. Her name's Dina Shortino. So she's very experienced in Delaware and doing these kinds of reviews. So basically what happens is the editor reads through the code, and we're looking for, at different levels of the legislation, we're looking at the most basic level for, does the wording make sense? Is something missing? Are references up to date? What happens over time is things change. The town laws change, the state law changes. And so we're looking to make sure our terms being used up to date. Have the names of various departments and agencies and officials changed? It used to be the building inspector, and now it's the code enforcement officer. And so the older ordinances have one term and the newer ordinances have a different term. We want to make that standard. Reading through, looking at fees and penalties, is everything consistent with current statutory requirements? Is the legislation consistent within itself and with other ordinances? So for example, I noticed it looked like you went through a pretty substantial charter amendment in 2021. There were a lot of sections changed at that time. And from the discussion earlier, it sounds like there's some additional charter amendments pending. So are the ordinances in the body of the code still consistent with the charter, with the amendments that have happened to the charter since the code was first established in 2005? So literally reading the code section by section, looking for those types of inconsistencies, things that are outdated, looking at all the statutory references, comparing the text of your ordinances to the state law. We track changes to the state law. We review session laws to see what's going on at the state level that might be impacting municipal legislation. And then it's put together in a report. And I can show you what that looks like if it's all right for me to share my screen. I don't know. I don't want to go over time.
No, Deb, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. So we actually have projects in process for 3 other communities in Delaware right now. Just bear with me a second. So we're in this middle of this process of the review with the town of Frankfurt, the town of Fenwick Island, and the city of Rehoboth Beach. So I'm just going to switch over. Lorianne, can you just confirm that you're looking at the town's website, the town's code? Okay.
I am. I'm looking at Town of Dewey.
Okay, so this is your E-code. This is your live E-code. So to set up the analysis, what we do is basically create a copy of this. So I'm going to switch over here. This is the project that's in process for the town of Frankfurt. This is how the manuscript, the analysis is submitted. It's online. This is a private version of the site, and the questions that are submitted are embedded right in the code. So I'm going to just give you, so this is a copy of Frankfurt's E-code, just like you have your E-code, except this has questions included within it. So I'm just going to scroll down here so you give you a visual of what this looks like. So if we go to section 2 here, you can see what the questions look like. Here's a question that Dina wrote for this town, pointing out. So basically what it does is as the editor is reviewing the code, if they see something they want to ask about, they basically flag the section and create the question. So the question here is, there's a requirement in this code that dogs be licensed at 4 months of age. And what the editor has pointed out here is they're suggesting that the town compare this to this statute, which requires licensing at 6 months of age. So this is a bit of a discrepancy between what the state law says and what their local ordinance says, and giving them then an opportunity to update it so that it matches the statute. So on the town's end, what that involves is once the editor goes through and creates all this question, this site is posted that has all the questions. And then what typically happens is on the community's end, a small committee is put together to go through the questions and answer them. And we do a training session with everyone who's going to be involved in that review. To get them access to the site and go through how to use it, how to review things, and how to go through and answer the questions. So it is an editor, a member of the general code staff reading through the entire code, looking for those types of issues to report back to the town. And then it's all presented in this platform. And then we work with the town and whoever's working on the project on your end to go through the questions and get them addressed. So I'm just going to pause here. Did that sufficiently answer your question, or did it raise more questions?
No, that answered my question. I think we have sufficient information, at least I do right now, but I'm going to put it out to the council. Specifically, since Gary, you're on Zoom, I don't want you to be overlooked, and you oversee the Charter and Code Committee. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple of questions. To what extent are attorneys involved in the review? I'm not sure what the background is of your staff.
Some of our editors are attorneys, some of us are not. General Code is a codification company. We are not a law firm. And even those of us who are attorneys are not, we cannot practice law. No codification company can do that. So the intent here is that we provide the review of the code and the questions. We can't provide legal advice. We're basically pointing things out. We're saying, look, the statute says this, your law says this. The ultimate decision of whether to make any changes is entirely up to the town. And we do recommend, what typically happens and what we strongly recommend is that your town council either be part of the committee that's helping with the review or that they review all the decisions before they're submitted back to us. So it's not so much that we're attorneys as that we have a lot of experience with codification and working on codes and reviewing the statutes. We're very well versed in them, but we can't provide legal advice, even the editors on our staff who are attorneys.
Right. No, I understand. And in this particular situation you pointed to here, where you're citing a particular Delaware statute, will you provide a copy of the statutory language from Delaware Code so that can be reviewed in addition to the question?
We don't do that because the state statutes are available online.
Okay.
So
you can can you help make that process a little more efficient? It's not always easy to get into some of those things.
I'd have to look into that because it can result, depending on the questions, there can be a lot of questions that reference different statutes. So we do typically expect on the community's end that if you wanted to check a particular statute, that you would be able to go into the state website or Westlaw to do that. But if there was something where you wanted us to provide copies of particular statutes, we could certainly provide that to you. But we don't do that typically as a matter of course for every question that is submitted with the analysis.
Okay. And since our code does change periodically and even our charter, is there a process that is being recommended here for us to engage in order to keep this fully up to date and to incorporate new sections of the code or new parts of the charter as part of the complete recodified charter and code?
Right. So we do recommend, so your current code will stay live as it is now. We've got about 21 laws here that haven't been incorporated yet. So we typically recommend so that the editor who's doing the review is seeing all the up-to-date information. The first thing we would recommend doing as part of this project is doing what's called a supplement, an update, to get all of these new laws integrated into the body of the code before it's reviewed. And then this code will still be in place and still used as you're working on the review. What happens is once we submit the report and the town goes through everything and answers everything, there's a couple ways you can proceed after that. So you can just take these and pass whatever amendments you want piecemeal as you go through it, or the more typical and efficient way to do it is we get these decisions back, we incorporate them into the code along with any other additional legislation that's been passed or charter amendments since the last update, and do a republication of the code that's got everything incorporated into it at once. And then the code is readopted. The code was last adopted, I believe, in 2006 when that first code was first put together. So what that does, you can use the code adoption process to make all the changes at once. That's the mechanism that you can use. That's why a codification project is very handy. You put everything in, do that complete review, get it up to date with everything that's been passed, republish it, and then readopt it to put everything into place. Did that answer your question?
All of what you just described is part of this current proposal, is that correct?
I believe so. Lorianne?
Yes, so I just want to make a few comments to some of the discussions that happened. When she was talking about experience, General Code, someone I think believed they said they weren't too familiar with the company itself. The company has been around for 60 years. This is their primary business is codification. And over the last 60 years, they've evolved into, we've started out Northeast and now we're across the whole US. And we've acquired probably 5 other codification companies. all based on our expertise and the ability to do what we do for code. They do, I don't do this editorial work, but these editors, this is what they do. They live and breathe it. So that makes them the experts in our world. It takes about 3 to 4 years for an editor to become an editor solely on their own because of the amount of training we put into it. But Deb and Dina, who she mentioned, I don't even know the many years they've been with the company, but they've been around. Deb can give that in just a minute. But our history is well known across not just the Northeast, but across the U.S. The second thing was when Kate and I were talking, the initial proposal was the editorial review only. And then we talked about doing a full recodification because the code had not been looked at, and there's 21 laws that had to be put into the code. So the recodification process is really, like Deb said, the most efficient way of doing it because we can incorporate the changes. So when you see just one question here on the editorial analysis, there could be 100 pages of changes, there could be 25 pages of changes, right? But in the end, you're making changes to the code that would need to be adopted. And when we adopt them, we write the ordinance for you with every single one of the changes incorporated so that when you do adopt the code, you're going to adopt it with all of the changes, as she said, at the end of the code project. During this process, say today you said, yes, I want to go with general code. We're going to sign on the dotted line and start the work. I highly recommend that every time you adopt an ordinance or a law, you email it to EasySup. You have to keep sending in those new laws. Don't wait until the code project is done. It's very, very important that we receive your changes as we're going because we don't want you to stop your wheel. You have to keep doing what you're doing, right? There's legislation that has to be made. There's some that have to be amended. So the best way for this project and the best thing for your editor would be to continually send in those new ordinances as you get them. So I believe that was part of your question was, how are you keeping this up to date? All of the information is going to be available to you even as you send in the new laws will be available to you on eCode. eCode is completely searchable for any new laws that are put out there during the code project under new laws. So I hope that answered the question, but there was a few things I wanted to step back on just to tell you, just to give you a little more information on that.
That was very helpful. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Commissioners, any other questions?
No.
No, seems very thorough.
Discussion on it?
You know, we all know that we need to get some things kind of straightened out in the code. This seems like a cost-effective way to kind of get this moving in a quite meaningful way. So I think it's a good idea.
Agreed.
Okay. The one question I have is that this is $11,500
Yes.
for looking at the codification. We haven't done it, I believe you said, since 2005.
The original code was published in 2005.
And updated in 21.
The last supplement was in June of last year.
Yeah.
How often what is your recommended frequency that municipalities reach out to you? And given that, whatever number you're going to say, do you have another annual review program or is it always a one-off review and you're providing a fixed proposal? In other words, do you have a fee structure that is an ongoing annual review for municipalities?
Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, no, if you're asking about, because there's two different things. There's the review piece, the editorial and legal analysis, and then there's the updating of the code. The editorial and legal analysis does not happen that frequently. As I said, it's been about 20 years since the town went through it, so this would be a good time to do it. In order for that to be useful, there does need to be a certain amount of time that goes by, so we wouldn't necessarily do that on an annual basis. It would depend on how much legislation you'd passed in just that one year, which typically for most places is not very much. What usually drives it is a lengthy period of time has gone by or some major change has happened, like the community has changed form of governments or adopted a new charter or adopted a brand new zoning and comprehensive. They're worried that there might be discrepancies between the new zoning and the rest of the code. So generally, once you get past 10, 15 years since the last comprehensive review, that's typically when we see places coming back and wanting to do another recodification project and another review.
So that being said, I mean, just keeping up with your update throughout the year too, as Kate, I believe, is fully aware how the update works with the supplementation, and you have something that's in place now when it comes to supplementation. You've just had a lot of activity since your last sup, so that's why you have so many out there pending.
Agreed. All right, before I ask council to weigh in or to vote, is there anyone from here that would like to provide public comment on this line item? In here? No? Kate online? We'll let them through.
David, you wanted to make comment?
No, for me?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. David Moskowitz, I live in Dewey Beach. The example they provided is actually a perfect example of what the workflow needs to be, because it's actually untrue, because the state actually controls dog licenses, not the town. So, and a lot of states have legacy ordinances on. Dewey Beach does licenses for using the beach, but the actual dog license used to be controlled by towns, but now it's controlled through the states. So my hope would be the workflow would be they would spot things, but rather than it goes to the commissioners and it becomes a public hearing, it would first go to the town solicitor for review to mesh with the Delaware law before it goes back to the commissioners for possible adoption. Because the worry is they're not, as they said, they're not lawyers, and I think they provide a good service. But if they're not coherent with the Delaware law, which it's not just comparing to the town, it's comparing to the state, there could be a lot of more confusion. So I mean, I agree with the contract, and I believe it should be chosen. But the workflow is it should be going to the town solicitor for review before the commissioners, because obviously their process has some flaws, as the dog licenses pointed out.
Thank you. Counselor, do you have any comments? No. Then I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the project.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So Sheena, you can add that to the budget conversation later. Okay. All right, number 2. Hour and 10 minutes. Number 2, discuss and possibly vote to refer to the Planning Commission an application to rezone tax map parcel 334220.14-205.00 located at 24 Houston Street or Houston Street, depending on where you're born, Dewey Beach, from Resort Business 2, RB2, to Resort Residential, RR, along with a proposed ordinance to rezone said parcel and to amend the comprehensive map accordingly. Again, this is to refer to planning and zoning, first of all. And for those not aware, I believe this is a Siesta, right? Siesta Hotel. We have members who have asked for us to take a look at this. So if you want to come up and make your presentation, appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, commissioners, for your volunteer service that you provide. I know it's a thankless job. But as a resident in town on the north end, I certainly greatly appreciate it. I know some of my partners do as well. We're also residents. Town manager, thank you for all of your help. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Townsend and Jim Dedes for the time that they've spent with our group, just answering questions and the like. So not every town works that way. So we're really appreciative of all the time and effort that you put into helping us. Last but not least, Chief and the other officers in the room, thank you for your service. Thank you for keeping our streets safe. As a son of a Marine, I certainly appreciate the good work that your public service provides. So thanks very much. Before I get started, sort of keeping it light like you like to do, Mr. Mayor, my son said he had a lot riding on this. So he he thinks he's entitled to the soda machine at the Siesta if we have a successful rezoning. So I told him he has to ask the other two parties. I only have a third interest. So if I may, can I circulate some, or hand out some materials?
Yes.
It's just what I sent yesterday, just if everybody. Okay.
Yeah, oh, well, maybe we all don't have to.
Okay.
All right.
I was going to refer to some of the materials, but I just wanted to cover really four things today: the background on GIR properties and the Siesta Motel. Number two, why we believe the rezoning is appropriate and consistent with the code and should be recommended to planning and zoning, at least for consideration. Number three, to sort of give you some color on the desired end result, both on the lot lines and some sample homes that would be put there. So first and foremost, Siesta Hotel or Motel was built in 1961, so it's a fresh 63 years old, young, which will become important for some of our reasons about the rezoning. It's 30 units. It sits on a 150 foot by 100 foot lot at 24 Houston or Houston Street, however you want to refer to it. GR Properties, single purpose entity, was formed to acquire the Siesta Motel and hopefully redevelop it into 3 single family homes with 3 50 by 100 lots, which I'll explain in greater detail. So we're seeking to initiate the change in zoning in accordance with section 185-73, which is tab 2 of the materials. I've also included another code provision that I'll refer to briefly. So going to the third point of why we believe it's appropriate, sort of this is a crux of the discussion. So number one, we think it's more consistent with the character of the zoning district in question. If you take a look at code provision 185-3 in tab 2, one of the, if you look at sort of 6 lines from the bottom, this chapter's adopted, that language there. And if you take a look, just move ahead to tab 4, which is the zoning map. You'll see I've circled there where the Siesta Motel sits. It's right on the fringe of the NR district. Houston Street is actually part NR, part RR, and the motel sits on the front end of there, zoned RB2. I would note that the hotel wouldn't be able to be constructed in an RB2 zone today. It's 30 units, only 5 units would be permitted if it was taken down and reconstructed under RB2. So we think an RR designation is more consistent with that area of the community. Again, it neighbors NR. If you look directly across the highway on Houston Street, it's RR all the way to Route 1. Same with respect to Clayton Street. So those 2 streets have no RB2 at the front. That's what we'll be proposing the change here. So we do think, as far as 185-73, it's more consistent with the zoning district that's there today. Number 2, if we go back to tab 2, and I'll sort of tick down the purposes set forth in there. And so again, 6 lines from the bottom, the paragraph that starts, or the sentence that starts with this chapter is adopted to lessen congestion. So we certainly think going from 30 units with all the parking that's there, going down to 3 residential units will certainly lessen congestion in the streets. Number 2, protecting from safety for fire, panic, and other dangers. And I'll give you some history here of how sort of this deal was constructed. The hotel is obviously very old, 63 years old. It needs substantial improvement. We started actually this process when the property first went on the market, and we're working with some other hotel operators to see if we could make a go at continuing to maintain a hotel, and that was sort of how the first offer was structured. After going through the diligence phase, it became pretty clear of the substantial capital improvements that need to be made to the hotel for it to continue to operate long term. It has a very limited remaining shelf life. So to get it improved would be very difficult, very costly, and really cost prohibitive. The hotel is currently barely turning a profit, under $70,000 a year. So really insignificant. It's not sustainable that way. So if you think about it from a safety perspective, you have an old building sitting right next to your NR district, right in the RR district, that needs substantial improvement. I don't see anyone putting that sort of money into 30 units. So for that reason, we think from a safety concern, in talking with the current operator, there was vandalism on the roof. The rooftop deck is no longer accessible as a result. So it will certainly provide sort of that second tab there, more safety for the community. Number 3, prevent the overcrowding of land. I think that's obvious. There's 30 units there. We'd be going down to 3 single-family units. And then again, for just promoting the health and general welfare of the community, we think it's sort of a better fit in that area of town. As far as any negatives, I really haven't heard any negatives for anyone in town. Perhaps someone may bring up the occupancy tax, but I think it's relatively insignificant when you think about the revenue that's being generated here, which is not significant based upon the tax returns. It looks to me that there's a $12,000 to $20,000 occupancy tax. Don't quote me on that. I haven't seen the exact numbers, but that based upon the tax returns.
Yeah, less than 9. So we want to know where the other 3 to 13 are before we move forward.
So you have to ask the current.
Joking.
Exactly. So I don't think that's significant in the grand scheme. If you turn to tab 5, you'll see that the types of homes that we'd be looking to construct. These aren't exact, but these are other homes that the group of us have had approved in the past. Some of them even constructed on differing lots. And some of the partners have successfully redeveloped a number of very nice properties in the community. And then just turning backwards, I think this is the last thing so I don't take too much of your time. If you go to tab 3, these are the reconfigured lots. We had Foresight conduct this service for the LLC. Lot 17 is really staying the same in its current format. That's the 3rd lot in from Route 1. Lots 15 and 16, they actually currently face Route 1. We don't think that's the safest thing. We'd rather see those 2 lots face Houston Street. And then you'd have your entryway for the single family homes, coming in off Houston. You wouldn't have a curb cut off of Route 1. And there's plenty of room there for the side setbacks to be sufficiently off of Route 1. So for those reasons, we respectfully request that you could move this through the planning and zoning. And we have some time pressure, so to the extent we could get approval before March 31st, 2024, that'd be greatly appreciated. We know some of that's dependent upon when planning and zoning meets, but happy to answer any questions. I'm sure 2 partners will.
We'll open up for council. Any questions for Mr. Thomas? David?
I don't have any questions.
No.
I mean, I think it belongs in P&Z.
Well, yeah, I pulled up the picture. It's, my wife and I we've walked this town 1,000 times, if not 2,000 or 3,000. And just as a kind of reiteration for everybody, the Siesta 1 has homes across the street from it, has homes next to it and a home next to it right there on Route 1. So it's not like there'd be residential, commercial actually combines things. But I'll open up for the community if anyone has any.
Sure.
Gary.
Gary,
That's your fault. You're on mute.
I know I was muted. People mostly prefer me that way, but a couple of questions. I mean, you mentioned the property and properties contiguous to that. There are 3 properties there. They're all RB2. And there's the Sunrise Restaurant on the corner of Swedes and, of Clayton and Coastal Highway. And then there's a house beside it. I'm curious about that. Is that not just a single family residence there? But yet it's zoned as RB2?
Yeah, you'd probably have the better answer of how they were able to accomplish that, but it is a single family residence next to Sunrise that's adjacent to the Siesta there. I don't know how that was constructed.
I can answer.
RB2.
Mayor, Jim Deedy could probably answer.
All right, well, Mr. Dedes?
Yes, that was, before we had the, that Route 1 corridor rezoned from resort residential to RB2. The property owner adjacent to the Sunrise Restaurant was able to build a home under the resort residential termination. So he was able to do that. The family was able to do that prior to the zoning going into effect and moving everything into an RB2. So he's
Okay.
now a legal non-conforming property,
Okay.
single family.
Okay. And then was there any consideration given to, since it's RB2 now, was there any consideration to redeveloping this as a mixed commercial residential space?
It's not something we're interested in, and we don't think that really fits within the framework of that area of the town. Particularly, we don't, I don't really think that fits within the NR district that, this commission has at times looked to protect, and I actually have a property. And so I think it's, better suited as RR, and I think that's consistent with the rest of Houston Street as well. That's the only property on Houston Street that is not RR or NR.
Okay. Okay. Just two other things quickly. I unfortunately was not able to be there today, so I don't have access to the materials that you brought to the meeting, but
They are online.
It's the same that's online, Gary.
Same thing, it's online.
it is online. I didn't.
It's the same,
see
it's
that.
document 13778 named,
Was that recently added?
no, it's number, it's,
Oh,
number, oh, I don't know, has it recently?
The letter had been posted 7 days ago.
Oh, okay.
I posted the additional material that was provided. I think that was just yesterday that I received it.
We posted it when we received, it's 2 GIR properties proposed plan.
Okay. Okay. I did not know that was online. I did not realize that. I just wanted to make sure that planning and zoning had, and the public had access to that when they, assuming that we vote this affirmatively, that planning and zoning will have access to that material. And then just finally, a question of our town solicitor. Do you see any issues at all with respect to rezoning this property, just in general, or with respect to our comprehensive plan?
No, I don't. I think it's a public policy decision that ultimately council will make as to what the appropriate zoning for this or these parcels or this parcel and these lots should be. I think you've got the discretion to amend the zoning and change the district from from RB2 to what's being requested. I don't see any technical reason why you can't consider this application as a rezoning. There will be some coordination, a little bit of coordination at least, that'll be required because we have a comprehensive plan map, and the state planning office has some procedures that we'll need to follow that we have observed in the past on numerous occasions, and we've had many instances where RB2 zoning districts in the I would say in the last 5, 6, 7 years have been rezoned to strictly residential.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
We're familiar with the process. Yep.
All right, what I'm going to do is open it up to the public for any comment. Is anyone here that would like to?
Jim Deegan, 103 Hayden Road.
So
We're gonna need you
what
to-
we'll have to do is ask
Sorry, Jim.
Mr. Deegan to come to the microphone. So
That Mr. Hart, Greenhouse. I was,
Again, much like Gary, I know this material was online. How many bedrooms per house, which will determine in the parking? So how many bedrooms are there per house?
Just trying to give you
Excellent
that
question. We don't have
steps.
anything approved yet, but I would envision probably 5 bedrooms, 4 to 5 bedrooms.
So whatever zoning requirements that we have would be applied to these properties if they're rezoned residential. So at this stage, we just presume that whatever residential redevelopment, if the rezoning is approved, is going to be strictly scrutinized by our office. We're not at this point not approving any kind of configuration as to bedrooms or homes or anything. Yep.
Any questions, Kate, for anybody online?
I do have a comment.
Or comment? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I can go.
Yes, you can.
Okay, David Moskowitz, and I live in Dewey Beach. The question is this, could this be considered spot zoning, which is prohibited? The applicant said in the application quite notably, and I say quote, quite notably, the Siesta property is the only remaining parcel on the ocean block of Houston Street with a zoning designation of RB2. But we found out that's not correct, as Assistant Town Manager's commercial business Sunrise Restaurant is on that block as well, and the property is adjacent to Rehoboth by the C office in East of Maui. That said, in the past, properties from the mini golf onwards to that side of the street and Izzy Plaza on the opposite side, and even properties within the town, have expressed interest in reclassification, but were prevented by the comp plan in the town. The town needs to decide if it wants to change the comp plan and gets rid of the commercial area. And if it does, it should be consistent and do it for all, which would be Sunrise, the former Collier's Trim Shop, Izzy Plaza, mini golf, not just for someone looking to buy a property to develop. And I'm sure the same request will quickly come from the New Grotto's condo between Reed and McKinley on Route 1. I just don't understand how you do something special for and lucrative financially for one property and not for all, and also not realize it could lead to an avalanche of requests. And the town, this could lead to the town losing Sunrise Restaurant, East of Maui, and mini golf, and they becoming residential homes when those businesses attract a lot of people. So the town needs to be cognizant of this and figure out a plan for all, because it's very odd to have a block and just have a portion of block one zoning and the other side a different zoning. And then just to add one final thought, on the other side of the town had a Van Dyke Oceanside property wait for 30 years, including a foreclosure, before the Board of Adjustment on the second hearing relaxed the requirement and let it go residential. Perhaps if this is a hardship for one property, it should go to the Board of Adjustment. But since it's a functioning business, it's likely not a hardship.
Yeah, can I just respond to that briefly?
You don't have to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Just, I think, I would just point out for the commissioners, I think a couple things are inaccurate in the statement. It is the only property on Houston Street that is zoned RB2, and it's differentiated by all the ones that were just mentioned, in that none of them neighbor the NR district. This is right on the NR district. Houston Street, the other side of it is the NR district. If you look at the other side of the road across Route 1, unlike the properties that were just mentioned, the front side on Coastal Highway is RR, which we're looking to go to. So if you look at Swedes and Clayton, Clayton and St. Louis on the front end of Coastal, those are all RR. That's all we're looking to do here. So I think the fact that it's neighboring the NR district is significantly different. I think the NR district would probably prefer 3 single-family homes, as opposed to what could be put on there is a commercial property at the bottom with 5 units on top. I don't really personally think that fits within the character of the neighboring NR district.
I just want to remind council is that this is not us necessarily not us approving. This is to send to planning and zoning. So
to that point, Fred, I think what the mayor's referring to is planning and zoning is going to really make a determination on the comprehensive plan amendment, as well as a committee level decision, as well as a zoning change. And then it comes back to us and we have another public hearing, and then we choose whether to accept the recommendation. I mean, the recommendation could be approve or deny, right?
That's absolutely right. This is usually more of a superficial analysis is done at this stage. It's very typical that an application like this would come in. It would be sent to Planning Commission, not because council necessarily approves or agrees with the representations made by the applicant, but just simply that's the process. We can rezone it really without a public hearing being conducted. Today's hearing is not actually a public hearing under the state law definition of a public hearing. So we're just giving courtesy to the public to comment at this point, as opposed to 15 days notice and publication in the paper. So there's quite a bit more analysis and attention that will be paid to this application. It's going to require 2 hearings, and you'll have presumably a great deal more information available to you when and if it comes back.
If there's no more public comment, I move that we refer these comprehensive plan and zoning changes to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
In regards to number 3, a few comments before we get started. We do have Michael Dunmeyer is here from US Wind. He made it out all the way from Rehoboth in the treacherous weather. Again, I want to reiterate something before I ask him to come forth. There's, Reed and Town Hall received hundreds of emails from residents who may have been misinformed. We're not here to approve the windmills. We're not here to put the windmills out there. It's what US Wind has put forth in their community benefit package, and I will ask him to identify what is a community benefit so everyone understands the intent. But it's what I'm hoping that as we get through this, people on the outside understand that this is federally leased land that went to these wind companies. I don't want to take any wind out of your sail, but if you want to come on up, Mike, you can. That the state approved, and some clarification is, what state approved it, and what has the state of Delaware done? The only thing that Dewey is actually commenting on, and we wanted to be transparent from council perspective, is that they put this agreement towards us, and I wanted the community to know that this is something I want you guys to weigh in on. Do you want the town to accept the community benefit, to move forward, to delay the community benefit, or decline the community benefit? But I'll let Mr. Dunmeyer go. Please go right ahead.
Okay, can you pop the pictures up there? Can you blow that picture up? Yeah, all right.
Or everybody can get up and walk close to the screen if necessary.
All right, so what you're looking at here is at the very top, you see Cape May. And if you go straight south of Cape May, Vanna White's gonna come up. Oh, here we go.
This is Cape May.
That's Cape May. And to the right of that is Atlantic City. We've all been over there. And if you go straight south, there's Orsted, which is one of the farms that the federal government approved the lease for. Dewey Beach does not own the water all the way over to Portugal. We own the water right at the beach. That's it. So where Orsted is west or east of the shipping lane. So when you're out sitting on the beach and you see a tanker with cars on it, you see them go down, all day long, right? That's a federal water. I mean, those are federal waters there. So the government gave leases there. Dewey Beach has no control over what the federal government issues for leases. If you go further south in blue right here, that's US Wind's property. And if you go due west of there, you see the yellow line that divides Maryland and Delaware. So just a little bit of it is mostly in front of Fenwick, but most of it is in front of Ocean City. This representative here is from US Wind. They have no windmills anywhere near Dewey Beach. 24 miles away would be the closest windmill. So you can see by this map right here that US Wind, there's two companies. Orsted is not here today. Will Orsted want to put windmills up? I'm assuming if they bought a lease, I'm sure their intentions are to do it. But this representative here today is with US Wind, and they're, I'm sorry to say, Mike, but that's Ocean City's issue. That's not Dewey Beach's issue. Right? So anyway, but looking at, I just want the public to know, because I think the information went out to everybody is Dewey Beach is approving windmills in front of on their beach, which couldn't be further from the truth. So that's Mike, you could take it from here, but I just wanted to explain in hopefully a very simple way what this is.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Bauer and Mayor Stevens. Thank you all for coming out. What I'll do, I'll go through a few slides here just to give you context on the project itself. But as the mayor has pointed out, we're not here today to opine about the project. This is really about the benefits agreement, but just so you have some background about the project. And Commissioner Bauer really covered everything that I would on this slide. I always like to start by just explaining that there are two developers, two separate lease areas in the area. My company is US Wind. Our lease area is essentially off the coast of Maryland. That's what we'll be talking about today. So go ahead and flip slide, Kate. And we have won 2 awards that would enable us to develop about 1,100 megawatts of offshore wind energy. That's enough to power about 340,000 area homes while displacing about 2.5 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. We can do this with 76 turbines and 3 offshore substations. And if our preferred plan were approved by the regulators that are involved in this, the layout that you see there is what we would use to deliver that energy. And in that layout, as Commissioner Bauer mentioned, the closest turbines to the nearby towns would be 15 miles to Fenwick Island, 17 to Bethany, 24 to Dewey, and 26 to Rehoboth. You'll also see on that chart, though, there is an open area in the northwest quadrant that represents our excess capacity. So we have not won awards to date that would allow us to develop this area. But if future opportunities to compete for awards arose, we would do so. And so it is possible that that area would be built out at some point in the future. And if it were, the closest turbine to each of those towns would decrease the distance by 4 miles. So it would be 11 to Fenwick, 13 to Bethany, 20 to Dewey, and 22 to Rehoboth. There are a number of simulations that are out there. And actually, we can go ahead and flip to the next slide. This shows what would be the full potential build out of the lease area. All of the simulations that are out there show this build out, the full build out with the tallest possible turbine. And what we're showing here, as I mentioned, US Wind could compete for future awards. And so we are seeking to permit the entire lease area so that the government would have the opportunity to assess the greatest potential impacts in every conceivable way. And then if those future awards came up, we wouldn't go through the approval process again, we would be ready to go. Now in that process, our chief regulator, BOEM, asks us to identify what's called a project design envelope. So there are areas where they ask us to propose different options that they can evaluate. And the couple of those that are probably most relevant to people that are here are, first of all, the turbine type that we would use. We're currently evaluating 2 models of turbines, one that is commercially available today. It's a 14.7 megawatt turbine that at its tallest point, meaning with one of the blades sticking straight up in the air, would be 817 feet above the mean sea level out in the lease area. The second turbine that is under consideration is not in production today. It's still being tested. And that would be an 18 megawatt turbine that at its tallest point would be 938 feet from the mean sea level. As I mentioned, the simulations that are out there show that model turbine and that full build out. Now, it does you no good to generate this energy offshore if you can't connect it to the grid. So part of our plan is identifying where we would hope to connect and how we would get there. And if you look, there's a star that is inland. It's in Dagsboro. We have proposed to connect at the substation adjacent to the coal plant in Dagsboro, Delaware. When we initially went through this process, we evaluated every potential point of interconnection within 100 miles of the projects. This means we looked at Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware locations. The challenge is that once you get south of the Maryland-Delaware line, the grid is significantly older, weaker, and under capacity, and simply won't support a project of our size delivering that much energy. As it turns out, that Dagsboro substation has had a 1,200 megawatt plant attached to it and is actually an ideal location to connect a project of our size. And so that's where we're looking. Now to get there, we've proposed 2 points of landfall, one at Tower Road, just south of here, the other at 3 R's Beach, just south of Indian River Inlet. And from each one of those potential points of landfall, there are a total of 5 cable corridors that would take those cables from that point of landfall out to that substation in Dagsboro. 4 of those are terrestrial. They would follow along the public right-of-ways along roads in our area. One of them would continue to bury the cables underneath the bay bottom going across Indian River Bay. We've identified to our regulator that our preferred plan would be to make landfall at 3 R's Beach, continue to bury the cables under the bay bottom, go across Indian River Bay, and connect up to that substation in Dagsboro. It's important to note, as you consider this, that all of the infrastructure, all of that connection infrastructure will be buried below ground, from where it originates out at the wind farm offshore to where it ultimately connects up to that substation. And we will do that as we're in the water using a low impact trenching method to bury the cables about 6 feet beneath the seabed until we get about 1,000 feet from the coast. And at that point, we'll switch to something called horizontal directional drilling. We will take the cables and actually send them 60 feet beneath the beach and the dune without coming into contact with those sensitive ecosystems. So we won't disturb them at all. And by beginning to bury the cables 60 feet deep, starting 1,000 feet off the coast, we also take away any potential risk that those cables could become unburied through wave activity, storms, and the like. Now we would use that same technology, horizontal directional drilling, to send the cables underneath of the wetlands areas in the east and west coast of the Indian River Bay, again, making sure that we don't interfere or make any contact with those sensitive ecosystems. Kate, next slide, please. There are a wealth of visual simulations that are out there, and they're really best printed out on large posters, but for what it's worth, just to give you an indication, this is the 121 turbine, full build out, 938 foot turbine simulation from the boardwalk in Ocean City. It uses a panoramic view, which best represents the human experience from that point. And Rehoboth. So they've been identified by that box right there. So from this location, this would be, the full build out would be 22 miles from Rehoboth, which roughly approximates what the awarded build out would be coming from Dewey. So I think it's a fair representation. You can see that they're very small on the horizon, and particularly during the summer months, when there's a lot of moisture in the air, they will be difficult to see, but I never want to undersell this. They will be out there. The horizon will be a little bit different, and that's just a fact. But again, they are far, far away from us, and they will be very hard to see. Kate, next slide. So where we stand today, the permitting process, which involves a number of different federal and a couple state agencies, really revolves around the creation and analysis of our construction and operations plan. And this is a large set of documents that goes into great detail about every single aspect of the project. So to include how we're going to build out the components that will make up this wind farm, shipping them out to the lease area, the installation process itself, operations and maintenance of the wind farm over its life, which is set up for a minimum of 25 years, but could be as many as 30 or 40 with proper maintenance. And then decommissioning at the end, when we will remove all of that infrastructure from the water and dispose of it. Now, fortunately, well over 90% of offshore wind components, including now turbine blades, are recyclable. So very little of that winds up in a landfill. That construction operation plan also identifies all of the risks that we will encounter through our activities, and importantly, what we will do to either avoid or mitigate those risks. It also identifies all of the research that we've either conducted ourselves or have consulted in putting these plans together. Now, on June 8th of 2022, BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, deemed those plans to be sufficient and complete. That does not mean that they were approved. It means that after spending a lot of time going through them, BOEM believed that the information that they needed to make their approval decision existed in those documents. And when they made that determination, it kicked off a 2-year public process where they would assess our potential impacts to the local area and make a decision. Now, on late September of last year, BOEM came out with a document that begins to frame how they're feeling about the project, and that's an environmental impact statement document. It was a draft version, and they took public comment through 4 open hearings, 1 in Ocean City, 1 in Dagsboro, 2 that were online, and they took all those comments, including some that were sent in via mail and email, up through November 20th. They've got all those comments. The comment period is closed. They will now take that feedback and continue with their analysis of our construction and operations plan and come out with a final environmental impact statement, likely sometime this summer, maybe pushing as late as the fall. And within 60 days of putting out that final environmental impact statement, they'll make a decision about whether to approve, disapprove, or approve with modifications our project. Yeah, I think that's what I've got there. Kate, next slide. Thank you. We don't have time for this today. I just have this in here as a placeholder. There is an enormous amount of misinformation in the public domain about the potential environmental impacts of offshore wind. And I will put up my contact information. I'm happy to meet with anybody individually, in a family group, with an HOA, whatever, to answer all of your questions about this. But for right now, let me just say that we've had the rights to this lease area since 2014. We've been studying it since then. We have 30 years of European experience with this technology to fall back on and examine. And we are confident that we can develop and operate this safely and efficiently. Next slide, Kate. Thanks. Okay, so real quick, the 4 boxes to the right, let me just skim through this because I don't want to take up all of your time. By making landfall and connecting to the grid here in Delaware, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for the area. First, to make that connection possible, while the grid is stronger here, it still will need work, and US Wind will invest $200 million to strengthen that local grid. So Sussex County will get better infrastructure, greater resiliency, and $200 million worth of investment that would typically be passed on to the ratepayer, but in this case, US Wind foots the bill. That will also create a lot of jobs, particularly for IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers members, who today typically have to travel out of state to find work. We will be engaging a number of supply chain companies in this very large project. Some will be from Maryland, but many will also be from Delaware. And that by investing this money, creating jobs here, there is a ripple effect of further jobs created through that process. And then over here in innovation, we are already working with Deltech and the University of Delaware on the creation of offshore wind training courses so that folks here can become a part of that industry, as well as we have a contract with the University of Delaware's underwater robotics program to be able to use their underwater ROVs to do certain types of analytical work, again, at very low impact for our project. We have an agreement with we have a term sheet that we've agreed to with the state that is really for gaining permission to make landfall where we would like to make landfall and to cross through Indian River Bay if we were going to do that. That agreement would still need to be permitted by DNREC. That hasn't been done yet. That needs to be done. But if it is approved, then there's the possibility of additional state benefits coming in through this project. Now, what we're here today to talk about is the community benefits being offered to a number of coastal towns. So, Kate, if you could flip to the next slide. There are 5 parties that we're talking to right now, and I think most folks know, but the general arrangement is that it would be $2 million per town over 20 years. The way that would work is that we would make the first $100,000 payment to each town when we began construction on our first offshore monopile foundation. That, of course, implies that the project was approved because we'd be moving forward. The second $100,000 payment would come when we reached our commercial operation date, i.e. when we begin delivering electricity to the grid. And then after that, for 18 more years, on the anniversary of that COD date, each town would receive another $100,000. Now, I'm just about in my 3rd year with US Wind, and I've been out meeting with towns, civic organizations, and such for about 3 years now. And the entire time I've identified having a supportive relationship and a community benefits plan in place with the coastal towns as an important goal for US Wind. And this is because we operate under the philosophy that if you're going to be a member of a community, and we anticipate being here for another 30 or 40 years or more, you need to do what you can to support it and help it to thrive. And so we would want to get something in place. We don't believe that we know what's best for the towns themselves do, so US Wind would not exert any control over the payments that are coming in. The intent would be for the towns to use them to their best effect. Now, wanting to have this agreement in place, the one caveat we have is that no company wants to be potentially funding work against it. So we do ask that the towns that participate not take any formal action against the project as a town, as a municipality. And then similarly, a town retains the right to get out at any point. If no payments have come into that point, that option has no cost. If one payment has come in, they would return that one payment. If 10 payments have come in, they would be responsible for returning 2 payments. Again, this is simply that US Wind does not want to fund activity against itself, and I wouldn't anticipate that that would be an issue. Yeah, I think that's essentially it. I guess the last point I would make is that a town entering into this agreement does not do anything to impact the individual rights of any members of the town, any staff members of the town, or indeed any commissioners or the mayor acting on their individual perspective. It just asks that the town, as a municipality, not take action. I think that's it.
That's good. I'm going to ask, this is going to be a little different than what we normally do. So I'm going to ask after I have my 2 questions, ask council if they have any questions of Mike. And then what we're going to do is open it up to the general public. And instead of going up to the mic, if you don't mind answering the questions, so I'll leave it up to you. Kate will use her microphone to go around, state your name, your address, where you are locally in terms of what your question is, so that we can get all the information out. Mike, there's been some misinformation on a few different areas. Is this will the power be used, what you're generating, in Maryland or Delaware?
So the electrons tend to be consumed close to where they're delivered. So the reality is that those electrons will be used up and down the peninsula. But the billing is 100% to the Maryland ratepayers. It was a Maryland instigated project through the Maryland Public Service Commission. Maryland ratepayers will pay the cost of the electricity. And that, through consultants' estimates, looks like it would increase their bills by about $1.30 a month. But then Maryland also gets certain benefits out of that as well. Here in Delaware, again, when the project is out there, and turning turbines are turning and electricity is being delivered, when we turn on our lights, it's going to be clean energy that's powering it. But there are grid managers moving electricity around and power purchase agreements in place with existing utilities in Delaware that will define what Delaware ratepayers pay. Our project will not be a part of that. But as I've mentioned in other presentations, through a couple mechanisms that generally get into supply and demand, just bringing a lot of zero marginal cost energy into this area, it is expected that Delaware ratepayers' bills will go down indirectly as a result of this project being there.
Nothing ever goes down, Mike. Nothing ever goes down. I'll open up to council initially. Council, any questions of Mike Dunmeyer? Gary, why don't you go first since you're the farthest?
Okay, that's fine. Mike, first of all, thank you very much for coming today and providing. I'm sorry, I'm not on.
Yes, no, you can hear.
Thanks again for being here. I did have an opportunity to watch your initial presentation to Rehoboth and also to Bethany, and as always, you did an excellent job. Very knowledgeable and certainly a very credible spokesperson for US Wind. One of my questions is, I think one of the things I heard you say in one of your presentations is that there really isn't a comparable community agreement like you've proposed here anywhere along the Atlantic seaboard where a lot of these projects have been proposed or are in development. Is that correct?
There are a couple community benefits plans in place in the Northeast around Massachusetts, but they differ from this one in that they were essentially real estate deals. In those circumstances, the developer needed to negotiate with the local town because they wanted to make landfall in that town. They needed to run their cables along right-of-ways controlled by that town, so they needed access to land. And so those benefits agreements really are equivalent to the deal that we're talking about with the state of Delaware right now. I'm not aware of any benefits agreements that exist that are just corporate philanthropy, good neighbor policies.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, and I heard you mention this in previous presentations, that there is a substantial presence of ocean environment wind power turbines in Europe. Is there any? Are there any projects in Europe that even come close to the scope and maybe the size of the turbines that are contemplated here?
There are certainly massive wind farms that have hundreds of turbines, but most of them are older generation that were smaller turbines. They were also built significantly closer to shore and closer together. So they have a different visual effect, even though they're not as tall. They're closer, and the density does impact how they're seen. But there are, I believe there are new projects starting in Europe with this next generation. But what we do have right now, again, off the coast of Massachusetts, there are 2 projects right now going on that are using those 14.7 megawatt turbines.
Is there any experience you can take from the European experience that would tell you anything about the effects on tourism and any economic effects that might be associated with the presence of those wind farms?
I've not seen anything, any studies about tourism in Europe, and I have looked hard. Okay. But there is one objective study that was done on the Block Island wind farm that's off the coast of Rhode Island. There are 5 turbines. They are 3 miles from the Block Island coast. It's a resort community, not dissimilar from the towns that we have here. And in that study, the professors from the University of Rhode Island looked at Airbnb data, so objective data both before and after the turbines were installed, and found that occupancy rates, the actual rental fees themselves, and thus overall rental revenue went up significantly after the turbines were put in.
There is another study that I've seen that's been used in one assessment of what the economic effects might be. It was done by the University of Delaware, I believe, and it's I don't want to call it speculative, but it's basically not based on experience. What they've done, as I understand it, is presented respondents in their project with visual simulations of what a turbine wind farm might look like, and asked them what their response might be in terms of returning to the beach or other beach activities. Can you comment on that research?
Sure. So yeah, the study you're talking about is a stated preference study versus a revealed preference study. So stated preference, when you ask someone, pose a hypothetical and ask, what would you do? And I think that the Delaware study was very well structured and well executed. If you look at the results for the turbines at the distances that ours would be, they ask people a number of questions, but what they ultimately get down to is, if there were turbines located at a beach that you typically go to, would you go to that beach, or would you go to a different beach to avoid the turbines? And then conversely, if your beach that you typically go to didn't have turbines, but another one nearby did, would you go to the turbine-based beach out of curiosity? And if you net those 2 amounts, it gets down to a difference of between 1.5 and 3.5% in terms of what would be a decline. So, there's slightly larger number of people that say they would avoid the beach that had the turbines versus they would seek out the beach that had the turbines. But there's a third category of people that were identified as non-beach goers. And a significant percentage of them, 9%, said that they would actually take trips to the beach that had the turbines because they would want to see them. And if you netted all that out, it tends to be net positive in terms of tourism. Some folks are suspecting that that's the effect that we're seeing in Block Island, where you've got, people that are coming that may not have always gone there before, coming specifically to see those turbines.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop there and let others have an opportunity to ask questions.
No. Council?
So where I am is I'm looking forward to hearing public input both in this meeting and after the public has had a chance. Thank you very much to hear more complete information about what the real impact is on the viewshed, or lack of impact, or minimal impact, what our real ability is as a town to not really regulate this. We just don't have any. I want to hear what the public thinks about this, considering these other factors that Mr. Dunn-Meyer and Paul Bauer kind of brought to life for you all here. Anything?
So, Mike, thank you so much for the stuff that was available online. It was very informative, and looking over that before coming to the meeting made me more informed being here. Having you present it here in person also makes it easier to take it in. One of the things that I read was that while you're making the community support offers to each town, if one town were to bargain harder and get more money, then all towns would benefit equally. Is that correct? You didn't say that in this, and I wanted to make sure I didn't misread something.
We do have a most favored nation clause in there that says that if another deal was struck down the road outside of this one, and that deal was more beneficial than this one, then this deal would upgrade to that level.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Barrow?
Yeah, the only thing that really jumped out at me in the presentation, well, thank you very much for putting that together. I think that educates the public well. What discretionary abilities do towns have? I don't know if you could speak to that point.
Within the approval process for
Yes.
a wind farm?
Because if we did agree, we would be agreeing to, not to have discretionary ability. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, well, in terms of the permitting process, this is, as I think it was the mayor who laid out, it's a federal and state process. So BOEM is our lead regulator, but NOAA, the FAA, DOD, Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, a number of other federal bodies have regulatory input on this and ultimately have to approve the project. They all converge around the time that BOEM is leading us through again, towards summertime of this year. In the state level, DENREC has to permit this. So as you mentioned, we are in federal waters. The lease is in federal waters. When we get 3 miles from shore, those are state waters. And we've identified 3 Rs in Tower Road as potential landing points. Those are pieces of state real estate. And then again, the state controls any potential subaqueous leases that would go across the Indian River Bay. So those are all of the permitting bodies. The town is not a part of that. Towns, of course, can choose to take action to try to delay the project, but they're not a part of the approval process.
So I think what you're saying is the state has a lot more discretionary ability than Little Dewey Beach does, right?
That's correct.
It's not a whole lot we can do to say, we're agreeing to give up discretionary ability, but we don't really have any.
That's essentially true. Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
And I would just make a comment based upon today's paper. I assume your purchases of the 140 acres of land, the R power plant indicates your almost confidence in this going forward.
Yeah, and well, one of the challenges for a big infrastructure project like this is that one, you have to set your supply chains and contracts up well in advance. The other thing is you have to achieve site control, demonstrate site control. And so, yeah, we have purchased 140 acres around that substation in Dagsboro. What we would do is we would build a substation right next to it for each one of our projects. We would connect to our substation and then just bridge across 100 yards or so to that existing substation. So having that real estate means that we now control have a site control for where we would connect to the grid. And yes, that does express some confidence that things will go well.
All right, before I just want to
Mayor,
make
I have a question. Sir.
Sure, go ahead.
So this US Wind project that you're talking about and we're talking about today is off of Ocean City. If you did end up with another one that was closer and off of Dewey Beach, would our agreeing to this this agreement where we get the $100,000 a year, would that also go to your next project? Or if it's right off the coast of your Dewey, we don't want it, is that a whole nother agreement?
So this agreement is only for any work that would happen in our existing lease area, essentially off the coast of Maryland. If US Wind bid on or took over control of another lease area and wanted to develop another project, that would be a separate matter.
Thank you.
So if hypothetically, let's say you acquired the rights to Orsted's lease, that would be a whole separate agreement, a whole separate discussion would have.
Yes.
And there's no guarantee that that agreement would be put in place.
I'm going to open up to the public first in 1 second. I did want to, I commented early on that, we received hundreds of emails. 80% obviously were against the effect on our view shed here in Dewey Beach. 20% were probably in favor of us promoting the effects of trying to reduce climate change. So, I mean, it has gone both ways. There's more on the not than the yeses. But I just wanted to put that out. I'd like to,
if I might,
yeah.
Those, because I didn't receive 100, I received 4 dozen personally. And most people were under the understanding that the turbines would be as close as the ones proposed off New Jersey. And I believe those off New Jersey are 14 miles off, and we're now talking 25 or 26 miles off. So it's a different view, and it's not right off Dewey Beach, if I've got my facts straight.
That is correct.
Yep.
All right, with that being said, a little different, I don't mind. Okay,
Just
of
one
course.
real quick point that relates to the question that was asked about the scope of this agreement. It does refer to, in the whereas clause, to a federal lease area that's defined as OCSA 0490. It would be typical in an agreement like this sometimes that has whereas clauses, that the whereas clauses would be incorporated into the agreement or referenced within the agreement as being part of the agreement. There is a definition of agreement in this instrument. Not asking for an answer, but I think we would kind of like to see that the agreement definition be broadened to at least make it clear that the whereas clauses are part of the agreement.
Yeah, that sounds fine. As we've moved through this process and continued our discussions, we found a couple areas that would benefit from clarification. So whereas the general terms of the agreement in terms of what each party is signing to, we would say is fixed at this point, totally open to additional clarifications that make it a better document. And that would be one, sure.
I have one additional question before I put it out to the community, and so I want you on the record in terms of the answer. Right now, we are, based upon one of the charts that you showed, it is really dependent upon, I believe, a September BOMA, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management decision of where that moves forward. If we were to continue to gather public comment, public information, and delay any action today, will US Wind keep that agreement on the table if, after BOMA's response, we decided yes or no, if we decide yes to move forward?
Yeah, that question, Mayor Stevens, has come up in a couple town council meetings that I've participated in, and the bottom line is that we are very sincerely interested in establishing a supportive relationship with the towns. We're on your schedule, not vice versa, and that particular milestone date of BOEM making a final decision on the project, I think, is a particularly valuable one, because the reality is that if BOEM doesn't approve it, the project doesn't go forward and the benefits would not flow. So that decision makes this possible. And we're perfectly fine with waiting if the towns would like to wait on that milestone to move forward.
All right. What we're going to do, as a matter of organization, we're going to go from front row, left to right, in terms of you have a comment, and Kate's going to give you the microphone. So raise your hand if you would like to have public comment and or questions for Mike while you're here. So no one on the left side. All right. Why don't you guys go first?
Can we put on the record too, Mayor, you do have comments on Zoom?
Right.
We see you. We will get to you. Hang
We'll see
tight.
you.
We're going to take care of the room first.
Tom Fox, Sweet Street, Beachcomber, Unit 6. My question is this: what you're showing us right now, it's 20 miles away, it's out to sea. My question is, if you set up the infrastructure, what's the likelihood of then it maybe moves down, because now we have infrastructure in place to handle that electricity?
I'm sorry, you say that the likelihood that the project would be taken down?
Well, no, your project goes, which is, we don't see that, but then this other section that the other company has, does this then help them move forward to, what we don't want to end up with is right off of our beach. I mean, I think that's why we're here. So I guess my question is, your plan goes through, does that make it easier for the other group to get theirs done, or for those wind farms to end up in front of Dewey?
I don't think it really affects it one way or the other. The federal and state process for approval will be what they are. Ørsted has not filed their construction and operations plans yet, so they aren't close to being public. I don't know what their plans are. There are some physical limitations to being able to take certain paths with the cables. So Indian River Bay narrows considerably at the western end. There's really room enough for one project's cables going through there. But of course, Ørsted could bring their cables through a different route if we had already occupied that space. So I think at the end of the day, it gets down to how well either developer does meeting the requirements of the regulators.
Okay, then I guess the last thing is, if you took control, if you bought their lease, could you hook it into the infrastructure here? Or would it require another line going through?
So, just for the purposes of anyone in the room that could report things, this is not US Wind speaking to me, hypothesizing. We have no designs on Ørsted's lease area, but whoever is there, be it us or someone else, they could certainly connect up in Dagsboro. There would still be capacity there. You may have to take a different route to get there.
Okay, I appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bonnie Fox, also Swede Street. I just have a question about the 200 million. I'm not sure what that's for, and the $100,000 over 20 each year for 20 years. How is that? Is that compensation for something? I'm just not sure what that is supposed to be for.
Sure. So the $200 million investment broadly is to strengthen the grid. What that means is that we will use part of that money to build the substations adjacent to the existing substation. Think of those as kind of surge protectors. But then there's also some need to strengthen the lines in town, add capacity in the area to be able to transmit that greater amount of energy safely. The benefits agreement that we're discussing with the towns is completely independent from anything else that's really associated with the project from a cost perspective or a permitting perspective. It aligns with our philosophy of wanting to be a good neighbor. And this was what we felt comfortable offering, and what in the initial conversations with some of the mayors felt like was reasonable on both ends.
Okay, I'm just curious as to how they arrived at those figures. They seem very small, in my opinion, if it's a peace offering or whatever, goodwill payment for what the impact will be on our community, $100,000 a year. But I just wasn't sure exactly what that was, but you've made it clear. I'm not sure who decided and made the final decision on that, but it sounds like it's been finalized. Is that right?
It goes up to our board. So the decision has been made. That was
what you
the level
can
that they were
justify
comfortable with.
paying, right, okay. All right, thank you.
Jim?
Jim Deegan, 103 Hayden Street. Mike, your business has to be you have to be making money. So the question is, this cost has to be passed on to the consumer, which will increase our rates over the long haul. Is that correct?
Well, remember that for all the projects we're talking about here, Delaware ratepayers won't be affected. You will not be paying for that energy, just Maryland ratepayers. But the analysis that was done suggests that the typical Maryland ratepayer would see an increase of about $1.30 a month.
I'm Chris Hayes. I'm at 16 Dagsworthy, right across the street here. Bought our house in 2004 because of the view. You mentioned good neighbor. Well, a good neighbor wouldn't put something like this up in our neighborhood. We mentioned the state of Delaware controls. Well, as a town of Dewey, we see what the state of Delaware did with the 5G towers. Put them up right along the dunes. We don't see that the state of Delaware is looking out for our best interests. These turbines, whatever, they're about 3 football fields tall. So let's look at it in that perspective. 3 football fields stacked on top of each other is how tall these things are. That's kind of frightening. $100,000 a year is nothing. The Starboard does that in an average day. Let's put it in perspective. I mean, that's nothing. Those are good days. I just don't see the benefits of this thing to us. We love our beach town. We love the views. We love what we have. We don't love this proposal.
Fair enough.
You want?
Just if I can respond, for what it's worth, I also own a home here in Dewey. My wife and I have one, and my family had one going back to 1947. I also own a home in Lewis. So I have skin in the game, just like all of us here. The perspective that I take on this, and I'm certainly sympathetic. I surf, I look out at the horizon all the time. But I've spent much of my career working on ocean conservation issues, and so I spent a lot of time looking at climate change, looking at sea level rise, looking at the potential impacts of this specific area to the worsening conditions of ocean warming and sea level rise. And if you look at the NOAA modeled maps, in 30 years, we may have some serious problems maintaining a coast here. We're kind of playing for the second half of the century, and I don't know how well folks understand that we're running out of time. And just to finish, so I look at it from my view is pragmatic, and that's why I accepted this job, because to me this is about protecting this peninsula, Dewey Beach that I love, Bethany, South Bethany, all of the coastal areas in this area for my children and my grandchildren, so that they can have that experience. Because without aggressive adoption of clean energies, energy reduction technologies, and all sorts of things like that, truly an all-in effort, we will struggle to maintain this land.
And I disagree with that. I think this whole climate change thing is a bunch of BS. I think that the nature controls the heating and cooling of the climate. CO2 has been called just a horrible thing. It creates life. We wouldn't exist without CO2. More CO2 creates more life. So I'm not buying into your climate change propaganda. I'm not buying into your turbines. I think it's bad all around for our town.
Hello, I'm Colleen Wilson. I live in Fenwick Island. And I would just like to say to you, there's power, there's strength in numbers. All of the coastal towns have a lot of say in this whole discussion. And the strength is everyone saying it together. It's what happened up in New Jersey. All of those towns kind of collaborated together, and it's really delayed the projects up that way. Also, giving up your power, being able to say how you feel about what's happening is really not smart, because things are changing as we speak. Just recently, the federal government has allowed one of the wind projects to delay the decommissioning part for 15 years. So in essence, they could build these turbines out in the ocean and not have any money put into the account for decommissioning them, taking them down when they expire for 15 years. These companies could be sold many times by then, and there will be no responsibility to take these things down. In 30 years, there'll be much better technology, Mike, as far as clean energy. And we're going to be stuck with all of these turbines out in the ocean just rusting away, because the companies are not going to be responsible for taking them down. Things are happening as we speak. I would urge you not to give up any power to make comments about the process.
So just to address that, because I think this is an important thing for folks to know, as a condition of our lease with the federal government, we are required to put in place and maintain a performance bond that is indexed by BOEM to cover all of the costs of removing all this infrastructure from the water, specifically so that if something were to happen to US Wind or any successor company, if that were the case, the money exists to do that. This bond is increased every time additional infrastructure goes in. It's marked to market every 2 years, or between those two time points if BOEM deems it necessary. So it will be sufficient to be able to do that work even if US Wind isn't there. And I hope that you're right, that there are far better technologies in 30 years to be able to do this. My problem is we don't have 30 years to do nothing and wait on that. Right now, this technology is outstanding and it can do a lot to help us.
Just a comment about your, you spoke about the Good Neighbor, the community benefit agreements up north. The Vineyard Wind project, they had a Good Neighbor agreement with those wind companies, and it had nothing to do with real estate. I just pulled it up on my phone. It was all about supporting the community, being a good neighbor.
I've read their agreements, so.
Yeah, has nothing to do with the real estate.
Anyone else here? Okay.
I can speak up, I don't need a mic. I'm sorry, I didn't read all the paperwork that the town had put out in relationship to your project.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary Weir, 9 Bellevue. But
Yes.
Okay. So where is all the infrastructure and the raw materials and the whatever, the housing and whatnot for all these people who are working on this thing, should it happen to go forward? Where are they all going to be? Living, staying, being?
So.
All that raw material waiting to get out to the ocean.
Yeah, the infrastructure is a great question. It's somewhat ironic that offshore wind has the capacity to truly bring manufacturing in the United States back. Right now, the infrastructure to support the industry largely exists in Europe. That's where it grew up. But while early projects in the US will be able to use components developed in Europe.
No, I mean,
like,
like when you're
oh, no.
doing the project, where are all these people going to be staying?
I'll get there. There's a larger point. You mentioned infrastructure. Most of those production capacity companies will be tapped out meeting their own national goals in Europe. So to develop these projects here, this entire industry is being onshored domestically in the United States. So my company has taken over what was the Bethlehem Steel Plant in Sparrows Point, Baltimore. That's been shuttered for a long time. We are renovating that to be first a facility that will create the monopile foundations that will be used for our project and most others along the East Coast, the turbine towers that will be used. It'll also be set up as a marshaling port where all of these components, including things like blades, nacelles, things like that, are staged prior to being shipped out. So that's a ton of jobs right there, permanent, long-term jobs. Now, as far as the work itself goes on, typically the folks that are doing the work are sleeping out on the vessels doing the work itself. Installation vessels, yeah, and components come out on barges.
So it's all going to come from the Chesapeake Bay. All right.
Correct.
These ships sitting out there in the Chesapeake Bay right now trying to move?
All right, Kate, let's introduce online, and I should remind people that I do have a 3-minute stopwatch, but I'd ask that if your question's already been answered or comment has been addressed, that you accept that. But Kate?
So we can just go through the list. Steve Bardzik is at the top if he would like to speak.
Steve?
Yes, thank you, Steve Bardzik. I'm at 11 C Strand. I concur with a couple of the prior speakers. First of all, about I don't think the science has been proved about the benefits of this global warming, but it's difficult for me to understand how an electric substation or electric generation plant is going to affect sea level rise. You say that maybe in 30 years we're going to have the problem. You're going to build this out over the space of 30 years. In the first place, I'll go through my points and you can respond to each of them. Second is when you do the compare the two studies, it seems to me kind of silly to net against the number of people who are not going to come to the beach because of the change in their view, with a number of one-time visitors are going to come one time because they think they want to see the wind farm out there. It's comparing apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned. And my third point is that this $100,000 payment per year or spread over 20 years, I have no idea what the overall value of your investment in this project is going to be, but I bet it's in the billions. And you're looking to buy off each one of these 5 towns for the paltry sum of $100,000 a year, which in present value terms is less than $1,250,000 total if the money was invested today. Whereas you're putting a whole bunch of money away that you're saying is going to be the bond for ultimately taking it down. It seems to me, and I don't mean to be unkind about this, but this is a very paltry sum for us to give up our right to speak against this project. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Bonnie Ram.
Ms. Ram?
I'm sorry, I'm just an observer and I don't have any comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're still just going to work through the list just to make sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Moskowitz.
Hi, David Moskowitz. I live in Dewey Beach full time. The town commissioners in multiple meetings have complained about not giving proper notification about agenda items to the public and delayed votes as a result. In this case, you're looking at voting on a 20-year contract, which would commit 10 Dewey Beach councils, and there's a $200,000 penalty should a council try to withdraw, yet fail to put this issue in the town's newsletter or let the residents know other than an agenda item, and people had to find out through other methods. And the residents' biggest fear in this town has been the council passing something in the middle of winter when many residents may not be able to attend or may not know. Today, it's snowing, icy. The schools local to Dewey are all closed. There's a travel advisory. State offices are closed, and you change the meeting time to be 2 p.m. And this scenario is happening. So, and it's been said it's 80-20. Residents' feedback has been strongly against this wind farm. Ocean City, Maryland, Fenwick, Cape May, and most of not all the New Jersey beach towns have been against this. Why should Dewey be in the first in the area? We don't need some, just as the camels came and they wanted to have camel riding in Dewey Beach. Well, we don't need wind turbines as an attraction. It's going to deter Dewey Beach and destroy the town. And the common answer being given by people is it won't affect the town. That's untrue. No one gives you $2 million for no reason. And it's like a snake oil salesman. I'm sorry, Mike, but that's the truth. The town will be giving up their legal rights. So when something happens, that $100,000 will stop the town from actually stopping this. And then once you have one wind farm, no matter where is it, 20 miles, then the next one will pop up 10 miles and the town's already compromised. They won't be able to object. There's a reason every other town is objecting. Cape May, Fenwick, Ocean City, Maryland, and Dewey's trying to rush this through. It just doesn't sit right. Like, it's not even about the view, it's about the sea life. Like, and what happens if, what bond is US Wind posting? So if they go out of business, like another company had issues, do we get these things in the water and no way to remove it? Or does it just kill sea life? Like, no one knows these answers, and 100,000 is paltry. It's only 2% of Dewey's budget. Dewey can just raise parking, get that 100,000. This is not a contract to sign. It's just wrong. And just like we didn't want the oil drilling, what happens when the transmissions fluid leaks? I mean, you're seeing all throughout areas there was issues. So I mean, I would just hope that council either votes this down or delays this. And I live here with my family. My little girl is.
That's 3 minutes, David.
Well, you gave other people 4 minutes, so I'm just.
I gave everyone 3 minutes, and I've been calculating everyone that spoke, minus what Mike Dunmire might have interjected. Mike, do you want to make any comments, or you want to go on to the next?
Well, I guess first I would say, again, the town retains its autonomy to pull out of the deal at any point if they felt uncomfortable and wanted to take action. As far as environmental issues, we could go here all day and would love to just sit here and go through each one of the pieces of misinformation that's out there. But that's a false statement. It's a false statement.
Next on the list is Lisa Bailey.
Ms. Bailey.
Not sure if she wants to make comment, but just want to be sure.
Lisa, you're on mute.
There's also Margaret Evans. Those are the last two. So either.
All right,
if
Lisa,
either one.
Margaret, do you have any comments? Ms. Bailey, Ms. Evans, if I can read that. All right.
Hi, I'm sorry, it took me a while. Margaret Evans, 1B Bellevue Street. All this information is kind of overwhelming, and I've heard about wind farms before, but I feel like this has just been presented recently. So I don't think that any decision should be made until people have a chance to think about it. I mean, whenever I buy something, I give myself a couple of days to think about it before I commit to it. And this is huge to me, especially for the wildlife. That's my opinion. That's just all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, so taking in all the information and just kind of clarifying, but if there are any other questions of Mike?
Can we release him from standing?
You can release. Go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions, but I have some additional comments whenever there's an opportunity.
Sure. You can go right after me. How's
Do you have
that?
questions for Mike or before we let him leave?
Do you have questions
Do
for
you have
Mike
questions
before
for Mike when he's getting ready to leave?
I have no questions for Mike.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Part of the misinformation or misdirection of the information is that this is not us approving turbines. There's a mechanism of communicating to BOMA, communicating with the state, and trying to how this is going to affect us and how it's going to happen. But I do agree. I don't want to push this through. If any of you have seen any of the council meetings, we don't push things through. We discuss things. We figure out how to make it best for the whole community. So I'm moving towards not having a vote on this tonight and moving towards pushing it after when Bureau of Ocean Energy Management actually decides upon this. And also that we have that I think it's a big enough, it's a big agreement in terms of how it may affect doing. It may be a small payment in terms of the overall value. But we'll address it after. We might move it out of the project section and be able that on the website and continue to educate and update the community in terms of as things move forward with either US Wind or Ørsted. But I'm not going to ask for a vote today. So that's, Gary, I'll let you go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, my comments are specifically about the agreement. I think as one of the commenters noted, if you look at a stream of payments of $100,000 over 20 years, you really have to look at that in terms of what it represents in current dollars. And it's really represents about anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million over in terms of current dollars, depending on what you believe inflation will be over the next 20 years. The couple of things concern me here. It talks about the town will not exercise discretionary authority to obstruct or delay development of the projects. It's not at all clear what action we might take that would be construed as exercising our discretionary authority and how it would get tied to obstructing or delaying development of the projects. I'm not sure what the company might contend is the effect of any action that we might take. Could we hold a forum that talks about both the positive and negative effects? I suspect we probably could. If there's some new science out there that shows particularly negative environmental effects, and we held a forum on that, is that some sort of action that might be construed as obstructing or delaying development? This really is, I think, an evolving science. I really do believe that US Wind has taken advantage and is basing their project on the best available science that's out there. And part of my belief in that, I think, is because Mike is a very credible representative for the company. Mike served on the town council. He was on the town council when I first started on the council at Dewey Beach. So I really think he's a credible spokesman for this, and I think they have based this on the best science available. But it's evolving. It's often the case that the best science is supplanted by even better science. I just saw today that there are a couple of agreements that the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration just signed to do some additional studies, not the least of which is monitoring sound levels and the effect that might have. There's another research agreement that looks at the marine ecosystem and any potential effects. There's lots of research that has been done, and a lot of that research concludes by saying there's more research that's necessary. So as that research comes out, I would really like to see the town in a position to be able to take a stance on the basis of that. If it turns out that there's some research that indicates that there should be a different approach or a slowed approach, I think we ought to have the opportunity to be able to support that. So I don't have any specific objections at this point to this particular project, but at this point, and I agree that we don't need to vote on this today. At this point, I don't think I would be supportive of the town signing this agreement.
Thank you, Gary. Paul.
Well, I agree with, both you and Gary on this. From a public perspective, when a company makes an offer to you, do we have the authority without having a public meeting to just sign it? No, of course not. That would be the dumbest thing in the world. So we bring it to a public meeting and then we get accused of, hey, we're trying to approve windmills off our shore. That's not what we even talked about today. So I think, the people have to understand the information of who builds the windmills, how did they get the federal leases? Does everybody have the number for BOEM? It's a federal agency. If you Google it, boem.gov, it's easy to go get to. It's been going on for years. And when was this lease done, Mike? 2014. 14. That's a long time ago. So this isn't something that's being rushed. I'm in favor. I don't want to accept this offer today, but I want to get it into the public view here, so we can have good conversations about it. I think everybody knows where U.S. Wind's jurisdiction is now, right? We all know the difference between that and Ørsted. Let's talk about this one. Let's not, I think some people still think these windmills are right outside here. So I think we need to take a look at what U.S. Wind's proposing, and one day we're going to probably get a proposal from Ørsted, and we're going to have a different conversation. So I'm in favor of let's sit on this. Let's let this process play out. But the federal government has a role. Has anybody here written anything to the federal government against it? I think everybody should. If you're against it, tell the people who are in charge of it you're against it. At the state level, are you in favor of Governor Carney signing it to bring the cables onshore to provide the electricity over to Dagsboro? If you're against it, let Governor Carney know, because if you don't tell him, he may sign it. But this is still all in play. But if you don't do something, stuff's going to happen. Dewey Beach isn't going to stop this process. We all in this room could be against it, but if we don't let the people that are in charge of it know, then that's on us. I think that's the main point I'm trying to make. But I'd be in favor of just tabling this thing and let's see how it all plays out.
I was hoping you'd get to 3 minutes so I can stop you.
A minute, that's good.
Can I have a motion to table this agenda item?
I move that we table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kate, for the record, I'd like to see this table to at least after Bowman makes their decision, so in September. I'm going to pause right now because I know a lot of you came here for this reason, and it's snowing out. So if you want to run out of here, please do. But we're going to have a conversation on budget and finance. Not you, David.
You don't want to stay for the budget development?
Budget, come on, it's going to be a fun workshop. We might be done before happy hour's over.
Now we're back to the regular council.
Same thing online.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful.
No, I'm leaving.
I just hope everybody does the same.
Unfortunately, I knew the outcome before we started the meeting, which was that we were gonna, but I want people to be educated and understand, because I do believe that climate change is real. And you can't say no renewable energy with climate change. You've got to figure out the balance. So I appreciate it.
But I'd be happy to facilitate a workshop or, feel free to share my.
What was your background?
I just finished my master's last year in environmental management, so I've studied U.S. policy. I primarily work with coastal resilience and more about coastal boundaries and otherwise. But I'm really happy to see grants.
Are you working with Bethany? The town of Bethany on?
I haven't really made connections yet. I've had a couple of meetings, which was interesting.
Well, welcome. I mean, most of us are. Where's he going?
Yeah, well, I can.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
You don't want my card? they all from?
All right, if you're still here, you're staying. Kate, were we on pause right now? Why? All right, we're hour, a little, maybe a little more. All right, everybody. We're gonna move on to number 4 on the agenda. I guess let me wait for Commissioner Givings to get back. Swagger.
That's swagger.
Hey, Cliff. Sir. I thought we were gonna have you here all the time for security.
I told him he could go.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Still rolling. You got this one gentleman over here who looks a little threatening.
There's a gym guy over here. I don't know. Get you. Jim, thanks for hanging in here. Everybody else left.
We're waiting for one commissioner to. All right. Number 4, discuss possibly vote on ordinance to amend chapter 1-16 definitions in municipal code to include the term electronic smoking device and revise the term smoking.
So I can take that one.
Okay.
So currently, our code under civil offenses at Chapter 80 prohibits smoking in town parks, beaches, dunes, and beach access walkways, and requires the town to place signs and enforce violations of smoking in those places. There may also be provisions elsewhere in the code around restaurants and other such things that relate to smoking. And currently, our definition of smoking does not capture these electronic smoking devices. It refers only to the burning of a lighted cigarette pipe or other matter or substance that contains tobacco product, marijuana, or hemp. So it was my understanding that there was a desire to broaden that definition to include electronic smoking devices. And in order to do that, the definition was added, or is proposed to be added by this ordinance at line 25. And then at line 38, the definition of smoking is amended to refer to the defined operation of a electronic smoking device. So that's as briefly as I can state it.
Just amendment to expand the definition. Okay. Council, any questions of Fred concerning this change?
This seems very straightforward. This is
And necessary.
This is one of the simplest ones I think
All right.
we're ever going to do.
Then can I have
Motion.
a motion? Can I have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Jerry? No?
Yeah, come on, Gary. You're on mute. You got the thumbs up.
I was just flailing around. I do not have.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. All right. Number 5, discuss and possibly vote on ordinance to amend Chapter 93 fees to increase Board of Adjustments application fee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So currently our fee is $500. And if you look at the comparisons that were given, so we're at 500, Lewis is at 1250, Rehoboth's at 1,000, Bethany Beach is at a 500 initial application. But if you have to bring your town solicitor in, that's another $1,000. And then if you have to bring somebody in to actually take notes during, it's another $2,000. Bethany Beach is at 1,500, Fenwick's at 1,500, Henlopen Acres is at 1,500. You can see the town has fallen behind. And when we have a Board of Adjustment meeting, who are the people that are here that the town is paying? You're paying my salary to be here. We're paying Kate, who is here on overtime for those, and we're paying our town attorney to come in for that. So we have to advertise in the newspaper and post it that way also. We're actually not even breaking even on the current $500. So I would ask that you consider moving it up to at least 1,000.
Yeah, and one other expense is the expense associated with drafting the notice of decision that ultimately gets issued, and that generally takes at least as long as the meeting it took, and probably twice as long to write the decision as it does to attend the meeting if it's relatively short.
Yeah, and fees should be representative of what our costs are. I mean, it's not a money generating.
But it's a reimbursement of
It's a
time.
and as long as we can justify that that's a fair price for someone to pay, because that's our expenses, so I'm fine with that.
So
I mentioned it.
I have a concern, and that's up until about 5 years ago, it was $250. We doubled it to 500, and now we're doubling it again to 1,000. And I get the point. Some of these things are very complex. They require huge amounts of time. But we also sometimes have just a really simple thing that people want to do. And it's a homeowner who really doesn't even want to even hire an attorney sometimes because they're like, do I have to have an attorney to try to get this unusual situation? And I don't know. I kind of don't want to see people feel like, I don't want to, why did I have to spend $1,000 to try to ask that this be done, when it's something simple. So if we were going to raise the cost to $1,000, I'd want it to be somewhere where there's some type of complexity, like you mentioned, Lewis, where they have to bring certain other people in or whatever, that it becomes more expensive. But for the things that are really simple, I just don't want people to have to pay $1,000 to do it. It's a simple request that's simple done.
Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, I agree with raising it, but it is a matter of covering costs. I mean, I've sat in on some of the Board of Adjustment meetings. Some of the issues are really quite complex. I don't know if I would say, certainly not most of them are simple. There are probably some that are fairly simple, but there's no reason not to consider some sort of a graduated fee like Bethany has, where the basic application is $500. And then if there are additional services required from the town solicitor, depending on the complexity of those, we could have some sort of sliding fee associated with that. And as Paul said, it's a matter of covering our costs.
Commissioner Gibbons.
So I have a question. Whether it's basic or complex, it still requires the individuals that have been outlined to be in the room, some of them at overtime, some of them at lawyer cost. And even if it's simple, it takes you as the town solicitor the same amount of time to write up the ordinance, yes?
Well, a simple one might take less time, but we're required to issue a written decision, and if there's an appeal from that decision, the court will scrutinize that. So it is, there's a good deal of case law out there that has been critical of towns for not issuing a comprehensive enough decision that it could be reviewed by the court. So it is not a perfunctory little thing. I can't write one decision which would address multiple, similar kinds of applications.
Because otherwise it would need to go to the Board of Adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And along the lines of the conversation around covering costs, and this is at you, Fred, unfortunately, when the simple applications are put forth versus the complex, what is the possible range of time that's going to be dedicated outside the norm? And I'm trying to get to a point where I like the idea of covering our costs first. Second thing, I don't like the idea of jumping to 1,500 or 2,025. I just think that's too much of a jump. But how do we find that common ground that allows us to recoup?
Yeah.
So I represent right now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, I represent, I think, 3 boards of adjustment right now. One is the city of Rehoboth, and one is Kent County, and I've represented some others. I'm not aware of any fee structure, filing fee systems that would define when, at what point your cost associated with bringing an application would be increased from something basic to something more complex. And I think it would be hard to draft a policy or an ordinance which captures that or captures it well. As far as the varying time associated with something, In the city of Rehoboth, there was a couple of very controversial hotels that were proposed around the boardwalk. We had multiple hearings on all those. We had appeals, we had re-arguments, and ultimately litigation. Sometimes around, there's another example in the city of Rehoboth where I was arguing in the Supreme Court over a decision. So it costs tens of thousands of dollars, probably near $30,000 to handle a matter. And we certainly can't ask an applicant to fund that or to commit to funding something like that in advance. So many of them are routine because we've heard them before. They might be, there's a community here along the ocean where it was created prior to the existence of our zoning code, and there are all kinds of setback issues associated with it, and they have wanted to raise the roof, if you will, to give a little more headroom on the third floor. Didn't hurt anyone. It was not expanding the footprint of the building at all. Those have been presented to the board, and they're familiar with those. It doesn't take a great deal of time. But to define, the public has an opportunity to speak in favor or in opposition to an application, and I can tell you it's not always easy to predict which ones will be controversial. If we have a lot of opposition, that can add a great deal of time to application.
And, excuse me, Commissioner Bauer, Bethany having it divided out, it seems like every application would have the town solicitor involved.
I don't know of any Board of Adjustment that doesn't have a legal counsel that advises it during the course of the meeting, swears in witnesses, and
so Bethany is making a false dichotomy because it's going to be 500 plus 1,000 in almost every case.
Yeah, I think I've appeared in Bethany before for an applicant. I know they were represented at the time.
All right.
Can we make it a twofold? I think this might be easy to track. I mean, I don't get it. There's an administrative expense that we have, and perhaps 500 is the right number to handle the administrative side of it. So Kate does prep on it. We do the advertising. Bill, she comes to the meeting. Bill's involved in the meeting. And then Fred's expenses are something I guess we could track and have a reference to. If you spent 1 hour on it, we take that and pass that through. So maybe we could say $500 plus legal fees. Does that cover us?
I don't know.
I think it'd be a challenge because to Fred's point, we don't know how far it's going to escalate.
Right, you don't know going into it what it's going to cost, but if you keep appealing it, it's obviously going to be more legal fees. So you're paying the legal fees as we're incurring the legal fees. I think it's 1-to-1.
So I don't think a court would look favorably upon that kind of a circumstance. So our zoning code is administered locally. The state doesn't regulate zoning. The state includes a state law and says, all right, your responsibility, you municipalities and counties, are to impose a zoning code and set standards which apply equally across every property in your jurisdiction. That's your domain. However, if you are going to have that authority, exercise that authority, you have to impanel a Board of Adjustment. And that Board of Adjustment has to hear cases in which people claim to have a exceptional practical difficulty, some kind of undue hardship.
Let me kind of cut to the chase with my previous comment. Fred, is your position that it's dubious for us to try to do some type of tiered payment system in terms of the difficulty of the case?
I think it would be difficult for us to really hit the right mark in terms of drafting that.
Then I withdraw my suggestion.
Any other comment?
Yeah. I mean, can't the town construct kind of an estimate of what the typical cost is both from the town administrative side as well as, a typical number of hours of legal services that are necessary. Add that up, and then use that as the basis for the Board of Adjustment fee. You don't have, I don't think that's something that has to be made public, but at least you have a method to go back to so that you could, if someone asked, you could explain how you got there. And if it's $1,000, fine. If it's $1,500, fine. But, just a way of arriving at a figure that seems to make some sense and has some basis in reality with respect to the cost that we incur in a Board of Adjustment process.
I don't know how automated we are, but I do code my invoices for the Board of Adjustment. I don't know if somebody could push a button and it would tell us quickly. I don't think so. We probably have to go through our bills each month to get a sense of what the total expenses associated with the Board of Adjustment, and then divide it by the number of applications to come up with a figure. So that's something that we could either, I don't know if you want me to do it.
Wait, do you want me to answer whether I'm going to pay you your hourly rate to analyze bills? Kate, do you have any comment on this?
Just as far as administrative time, I don't want you to forget about our building official. She puts in a lot of time. Certain applications that seem very simple compared to, say, a hotel that's requesting 10 different variances, a lot of times they have an attorney who is well-versed in land use. He submits everything. The entire packet is already put together. He knows exactly what the applicant is asking for. If a more simple application comes through just for residential, a lot of times they don't have an attorney. They have no idea of the process, what all they have to submit, exactly what they're asking for. Of course, Dawn and myself never want an applicant to waste their time. We don't want to waste Fred's time or the board's time. So we'll assist them in the process so they know exactly what they're getting into, how to complete the application properly, so everyone has all the information they need. So even those simple applications, sometimes they can take more time because they just don't have the expertise, they don't have an attorney involved.
So I think our choices are a graduated scale or a flat fee.
Well, but I heard another line, which was the individual residence versus a hotel or commercial. Is it a true statement that a commercial Board of Adjustments application is more complex than the individual, or no? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Okay. All right.
And I do think it's probably not realistic to think that your fee schedule could be both appropriate and cover the costs of having a Board of Adjustment. I think it's a state mandated panel that you have to have and a function you have to perform, and you're not going to break even on it.
I'd motion to make it 1,000.
I'm okay with that.
Second. Any other conversation?
Comment.
Do you have a comment? Yes.
So somebody in the waiting room?
David, you have a comment? You can go ahead.
Yeah, David Moskowitz, Dewey Beach. From the discussion, it sounds like you guys should reach a middle ground because due to 1,000 base, but it sounds like you should sort of copy Henlopen and Acres and for each additional variance, ask additional amount. Because if one applicant comes with 10 variance requests, that's a lot more than an applicant coming with one variance request, I would think. So what Henlopen and Acres does is the base charge plus for each additional variance. So I would just suggest 1,000 base and then charge an extra $250 for each additional variance, a special exception or something. Otherwise, if you have an applicant asking for 20 variances, a huge list versus you want to discourage that some way and equalize the time of the solicitor and the board.
Thank you.
And Henlopen Acres already does that, so why not just copy their logic? Keep it simple.
Thank you. So there's a motion right now. Paul?
Yep, motion.
And David
Take a second. Any other conversation among the commissioners? Gary? I can't see you.
Yeah, no, I guess the only thing I'm uncomfortable with is we don't have a sense of how this relates to the cost to the town. I just, it's 500 now, and we look at what other municipalities are charging, and we decide we're going to go to 1,000. We don't really have a basis for doing that. I don't object to doing it necessarily, but we just don't have if somebody asked, why did you do that? I think we would struggle for an explanation.
I think I'm comfortable in saying that for most of, if not all of our Board of Adjustment meetings, the town is paying over $500. I'm very comfortable in saying that between our advertisement in the newspaper, Dawn's times, Kate's time, and our attorney's time.
Well, I would think it would be over $1,000
Right.
minimum. Yeah.
And Fred works for free.
All right, right now there's a motion and there's a second. I think there's two ways to going at this, and I'll let council decide. We can move forward right now and move towards $1,000, so that we at least have the coverage doing it. That may be a knee-jerk reaction, a quick reaction. I don't disagree that it's $500 to $1,000, and I think that's the right path to go. And then also but it might be a better road to actually go back over the last year and do a 12-month look-back study and to look at how many hours that were in there. But I think we're going to come back to the same answer.
With respect to what Fred said, when he explained what he has to do,
It's going to be.
I have a sense of what that costs, and
Yeah.
I think $1,000 probably is kind of like the low end of whatever costs to get it done.
Yeah, it's still
So
that's
the complicated
All right.
pieces are a lot more.
I don't disagree. All right. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Number 6, review the December 2023 financials. Obviously, they're online. Any questions from, well, Gina, do you have a presentation, anything you want to say, or no? Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I will. Sheena did a fantastic job on, managing these numbers all year and presenting it and helping budget finance out tremendously. And I think for the most part, we hit the targets that we set, which is, that's the goal of having a budget and living within your means on it. So thank you, Sheena.
Commissioner Persinger?
No comments that I think that we won't cover when we get to the budget workshop.
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on to the workshop.
Now, since this is workshop, do we got to close? No, we just keep going. Okay.
Still a public meeting.
Still public meeting.
Still public.
So
Straight through.
5 o'clock.
So,
From a process perspective, obviously we've looked at the budget that's been prepared. There's an additional sheet that's associated with some fee changes. What I'm going to ask council to first focus on and questions on are the non-revenue or income accounts, and focus on the operating expenditures. And the reason why I want to do that is because I feel if we can look at the operating and then the staffing and capital, we'll know what number we're trying to achieve in terms of a balanced budget. So with that being said, are there any comments concerning the operating? Let's start with the operating budget. Are there any comments at all in terms of the expense portion of what Sheena has put forth? Sheena and the town halls put forth. Commissioner Jazinski.
So the only thing I wanted to bring up is on public safety, and I'll be the first one to say that to make the kind of changes that we wanted to make in terms of having a great operating police force, we need to spend a lot more money than we were spending 4 or 5 years ago, and we are now spending quite a bit more money. The big question I had is when we added the 2 police officers a few months ago, we talked about the effect on the seasonals and basically the difference between those being a little bit, I'm not going to de minimis. It wasn't like it was 0, but it was pretty low. And when I looked at the budget, it didn't seem like we were getting that predicted savings on the seasonals. And I just wanted to understand a little bit more about what might be going on with that.
I can answer that.
Yes.
Okay. little background. When I do the budget, I start with the employee obligations. I track overtime for our officers all year long. So I took the salaries for every employee, upped the benefits based on what the state had told me, put in the officers' overtime, put those numbers in the budget. Then I went through what each department had told me. The chief and I had calculated how many extra officers she would need on the weekends.
Right.
I put that in there. Those numbers were already included in our regular officers' numbers.
Okay.
So I put 55,000 in twice.
Okay.
So by removing that, it brings the year-round officers down to 1,056,000.
Gotcha.
You also had promotions. The promotions was 47,000. So that's, and then you have the seasonal from where we originally started the budget last year to this year is an $80,000 difference. So between all of that, trying to find where I had the number, it ends up getting you, it's like it ends up about 235,000 difference, which makes up the officers.
Okay. So if I look at line, these are so hard to line up. It ends in 0300 seasonal employee salary and wages.
Yes, sir.
We had projected this year to go as high as 270. We had, but a year previous we were at 200, and then we're still at 190 in the proposed budget, and that's really where my question is coming from.
Okay, we have the chief is down 2 officers. She only has 9.
Okay.
She will have 2 coming out of the academy in a couple weeks. That'll get her to 11. However, that's still 2 places that she does not have.
Okay.
We had originally thought about budgeting for 12 or for 10.
Okay.
However, last year we lost 2 officers in the first week.
These are summer officers.
Summer officers.
Okay.
So we've budgeted for 12 just to hedge our bets that we might, hoping we don't lose anybody.
Okay.
So it's a lot of planning and one error that makes up the difference.
Okay.
I understand David's point of view, because if you're going to go from 20 seasonals to 12 seasonals,
correct,
and it was 270, then it should be 160, but it's 190. So it's math-wise going back and forth. But I guess you also have cost of living changes and et cetera.
Correct. And with having quite a few officers, seasonals coming back, the pay, yes, ma'am.
For this discussion, what I'm concerned about, or just want to be cautious of, is as we review this and we go next month through an approval process, we're going to be making changes potentially to our fee structure to cover these costs. And I'm not saying you have, but I don't want to overinflate the expenditures and then increase the fees to a point that it's not fair to the community.
No, it was that one error that, just based on the way the process.
Okay. So I guess my question for you, right now, we 671 off, right, in terms of revenue over expense. Is there an update on that number that's at the bottom?
For the combined, for the general fund and the capital expenditures projects, it's 617.
Okay, so it's a little bit lower. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what is the general fund? Because the set asides will pay for the deficit in terms of the capital expenditures, in terms of the funds,
right,
where that funds are going to come from. So the 586 that we posted on the website, what's that?
512.
512.
Yes, sir.
511.
Wait a minute, I didn't understand it. Can you say that again?
Yes, if I go to the last page of the budget, it shows a 671,920 as the deficit, but the general fund is 566, And when I think about the fee structure that we have, it's how do we increase fees or put fees in place to make up the deficit of 566 or what is now 512 with that adjustment?
What was the I'm sorry, what was the adjustment? I missed that.
It
Sheena.
goes to 512 because I had overstated police salaries by 55,000.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Now, Commissioner,
Yeah.
Mayor, if with y'all approving the codification review, there's already 5,000 in the budget for code each year. Kate said it would probably cost about 13,000, so I'd have to add 8,000 to this, so it puts us at basically 520,000.
So
is that project this year or next year?
I'm not sure when it would come in.
I was thinking, Gary, it was next year. I wasn't thinking that it would be in February, March.
Okay.
I don't think they would get it completed and be able to bill us.
No, sir.
Pay on completion or pay as they go?
I don't know the answer to that, but it's 12
Can
months. Yeah, Gary.
I have some questions. I mean, I have no basis on which to quibble with the expenditure side, really. It's and I really haven't had enough time to go back through a lot of this in detail, but there's just some questions I had about the set aside and the grants. And then I'll have some questions about the revenue side later. But if I look down the set asides and grants, we have $75,000, which looks like professional fees, which is half of the 150. Where's that set aside money coming from? I'm not sure what that source is there.
That is either the 5G or the town hall. It's part of both.
Part of both.
I'm sorry, Gary, can you give us a line? I'm trying to figure out where you are.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at set asides and grants, and this would be line item 602-1100. 602-1100. If I'm looking at that right.
In general.
It's hard to look at. Did I get that right, Sheila?
Yes, it's up in general and administrative.
So if it's $75,000, you're saying either 5G or
the town hall. It's both. It's part of both.
Don't we have a source of? I mean, certainly have a source of revenue for the town hall, and we have a source of revenue, I thought, for 5G.
Right.
So
That's why it's in the set aside. It's stuff that's over in that column. It's stuff that's being used, being paid for by money that we have set aside elsewhere.
Okay, but that's not reflected above on the revenue side so that it balances out? Well, I'm not sure what I'm missing. I'm just trying to see, how do we get to a negative number for set asides and grants at the bottom of the budget sheet?
If you look on under intergovernmental funds, general funds, state 5G funds, item it's GL 4040980, $75,000.
I'm sorry, say that again, GL?
4040980.
Okay, I can't find.
It's up.
49.
You're looking at the state, which is the state 5G funds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, so in essence, what you're saying is that $75,000 is covered by revenue above.
Yes, sir.
What, maybe my question should be in this set aside and grant column on the expenditure side, which of those expenditures are not covered by revenue so that we end up with a negative balance at the end?
Can I say it differently, Gary?
Sure.
Is there a source of funds that we currently have that will fund the 105 deficit in our fund balance? Or do we need to put 105 after this fiscal year into a certain fund in order to have a balanced capital budget?
It's more than I failed to have that answered this evening, and I apologize. I was worried more about the operating.
Okay, that's fair. So as we go to the next stage, it's one of the questions that I'd like, the capital, the sources of the funds to sources to fund the projects associated with capital acquisition, equipment acquisition, or capital projects need to be funded out of the fund balance for those funds with streets and infrastructure, et cetera. To the extent that it's not, at the end of this year, we're going to need to make sure that we fund those funds.
Correct.
So that's a zero sum.
Yeah, but more importantly, what causes that deficit? What projects are we trying to fund that, we don't have funding for currently in one of the existing funds? That's the other part of the question.
I will have that answer.
Okay.
No.
All right. That's first question to be answered before the next meeting, so
Yes,
we
sir.
can, okay. All right. I also see, Sheena, just talk about from an operating expense standpoint, and benefits are dramatically up, it appears. Have we gotten a quote in terms of what the renewal is going to be? Is that
The
why?
State Benefits Office sent out a memo the beginning of this month stating that they were taking a hit and that the cost of health insurance across the state was going to go up a minimum of 17% in the premiums. So I took all of our health premiums up 17%.
Okay.
They went up 10% last year after the fact, and I think they got a lot of complaints because they didn't warn anybody. So they're warning people this year.
Okay. I have, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but, today we had a meeting concerning US wind and the wind proposal. There's a chance that we might have referendums in addition to an election this year. Is there a variance cost by adding the referendums to an election or no?
So,
do we know? I don't know.
So we budget approximately $4,300 or $4,700.
$5,000.
$5,000 for an election. The referendum should be
just a line item.
Should be that same
Okay.
same cost, correct, Kate?
Mailing expense may go up a little bit.
All right. I personally don't have any other questions on the expenditures, except now I know the number's closer to 520. That we would want to figure out how to make up. Any commissioners have any other questions on the 520? All right. So from a process here also, we have all of the revenue is estimates based upon current rates, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And this also assumes the hotel tax is going from 2.5 to 3 based upon current rates?
It goes to 3. However, what I did is I've been tracking the revenue that the hotels report. And basically, I took the percentage change between last year and this year and estimated what it's going to be for this next year, and then took 3% of that for all the hotels. Some were high. Some were only 70% of the prior year. So where we're going up 0.5%, I couldn't justify taking it up much higher.
All right, where are we right now in terms of our projection for 2024 year end on the hotel tax? I don't want to disagree with you. I just want to make sure.
425.
425.
Right.
Right. So I took it up of 50,000.
So if you just took the 425 and increased it by 20%.
That takes it to 510.
Yeah. So you've taken a very conservative path. I mean, if we assume we got the same revenue, or if the revenue base was the same as it was this year.
Yes, sir.
It should be 20% higher. Because we increased the rate 20%.
I think I'd be more I'd be comfortable if that 475 was 500 as we try to close the gap.
Not a problem.
But that's just 1 out of 5. I don't know how you guys feel. I do believe that 2020 this past year is indicative of what we're going to have going forward. It's not the post-COVID, it's not the influx that we have. If just as a joke, if the project that they want to go through, we're going to lose 10 grand, so going from 510 to 500. If you don't have any opposition, at least that's another.
Yeah, there's some
25,000.
When we sat in last year's budget finance and we were trying to figure out what we think transfer tax was going to be, obviously a large driver. We thought 500, like, man, we weren't really that optimistic about it, but we couldn't go much lower than that. I mean, we weren't getting $1 million anymore, but let's go for $500,000, and we hit it. So, and that's with the interest rates being higher and all that kind of stuff. So, I think 500 is a good run rate on it. I mean, it's an unpredictable number, but
Even in the depths of the global financial crisis, when houses here were dramatically less expensive than they are right now.
Right.
We might have bottomed out in the mid-4s, but that was in just a financial calamity, So I don't think that would be any reasonable type of base case.
I think the big drivers of it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to go. I don't see any reason to go that low. Is all I'm saying. I'm just don't.
All right. I don't have any other comments concerning the taxes and assessments. It's now moving down to the license permanent fee section. I'll ask for you to focus on the proposed fee increases document that's online. And let's start with, if you don't mind, let's start with the parking.
And if I could say, Mr. Mayor, these are recommendations that came out of Budget and Finance
Correct.
last night. So it just wasn't Sheena and I pulling these numbers and just providing them to you. Budget and Finance approved and recommended these last night.
Open it up to council.
Okay, I have some questions about the parking revenue fees. First of all, if you look at the
Budget and Finance.
I'm sorry?
No, sorry, Gary. Go ahead.
If you look at current revenue and projected revenue, if you add those figures up, they don't total to the numbers that are below. If you look at current revenue, it totals to 103,100. And if that represents all of the parking revenue, why is that different than what's in our budget of about $1.5 million? I can't. Where's the rest of it? Something is missing here. Something definitely seems to be missing on the meter side. If meters represents all of the physical parking meters as well as the people who purchase or who buy parking on an hourly basis, that seems to be way too low. $189,000. It's different than some of the other data that we got previously, where the revenue was much more substantial, and I'm trying to find that at the moment. I think there was another estimate. If you went from 3 hours an hour to $4 an hour, was a difference of $242,000. So we're talking about something less than that because Budget and Finance is recommending $350 an hour. In any case, I can't reconcile what's in this particular document with what's in the budget.
And Gary, you are right that if you sum the current revenue, it is $1,030,100 instead of $841,100.
So that last line item is not
correct.
It's not in your portfolio.
Here's the thing with Park Mobile. Right now we have 10 different zones in the town or whatnot. When you put in a zone, anything that is not 412, it registers as meter. So in our financials, anything that was any of the other codes is in meters. Anything that's 412 is in daily. What I did when I was doing this proposed increase is I took anything that was any of the codes, but under $25 and above $3. And that is, so somebody may have gone to code 4002 and bought a daily pass, but it shows up in meters. Stranger things have happened.
Flaw in the system, but yeah.
Right, and once we go to this, just one code, it'll take care of that. So when I was doing this and looking at meters, that number alone isn't going to come up to match because of that issue. I can go back and I can analyze I have every single transaction that happened. I can download that and I can add them up and multiply, divide by $3, multiply by 350 to give you what it would be. But it's not going to be exactly hit anywhere because of that glitch.
That's fine. The other, let me just come back to a basic issue. If we've got numbers here that add to only just over $1 million, but yet when we add up all of the parking revenue that's in the budget, that comes up to $1.5 million. Why is there a discrepancy there? Where's the rest of the money? Aren't these all of the categories? Doesn't this represent all of the categories of parking that we have that would generate revenue? Or is there a category that's missing here?
Without me analyzing every single line of Park Mobile data, I cannot get an exact.
I think what Gary is saying
Yeah.
is that so there's a bad math, Gary, first of all, on the current, right? So the 841.
And projected, but the difference is correct.
Is right.
Difference is correct.
So that 841.1 should be $1,030,000.
Mhm.
Okay. But if I look at what you have in terms of the parking revenue associated for the fiscal year 2024 budget, with the 12/15/23 amendment, we're looking at, Jesus, it's tough to see. 425 plus 734 plus 350.
Yep.
Which is 1.6 million. Yeah. And that, for me, I think that current should be the 1.6, and then we'll figure out what the variance actually includes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's
the 185, right? That's the important one we're focused on.
No, but this number, what Gary's saying is that this $1,030,000 on the current should equal roughly 1.6 million, not $1,030,000.
So with a bigger base, you have a much bigger potential for more revenue. So I think that 185,500 has to be low because the base is 50% higher than what these numbers total to.
There's also something here that I think as we potentially increase parking fees, should be thinking about. And that's that I think between the different types of way people pay for parking, we kind of have some equity issues where some things are like a really huge bargain for some people and some things are like really expensive, right? And so the vacationer comes down here and rents a condo and gets a hang tag, is paying under proposed $100 for the week, I believe, for a day tag, $100 for the week is the proposed. Yet, someone who buys a homeowner tag for 16 weeks in the summer pays $175 and gives it to 16 renters from Memorial Day to Labor Day. In essence, basically $10 a week, or 10 times the cost, almost 10 times the cost. And we can't necessarily fix that completely, but we kind of invested and got people used to Park Mobile in town, and Park Mobile has the capability to distinguish between this is a new car versus this is a seasonal type thing and whatnot, where you register your cars. And you'd really want the parking team to be able to have these conversations with you. But from my perspective, people who kind of come down here for a week are being charged kind of this, and people who basically give it to 16 different renters for 16 different weeks are kind of getting a huge deal. And people always object to things being taken away from them and whatnot. But to me, it kind of seems like there's not a lot of balance in those two fee structures. So
you could argue that the 3% that they're paying in accommodation offsets it. That just,
Yeah. I mean, everyone can argue anything, right? People will come up with something, but it just seems like it's a little lopsided.
But that's true. Most of the people I know that rent get buy the 2 hang tags and leave it for the renters, and sometimes the renters take off with them. Sometimes they come to town hall.
But that's really a different issue, though. I mean, I think we need to settle on what the base numbers are, and then figure out how we might want to adjust each of these categories of parking. And we just need the logical starting point. I mean, I've got some thoughts also about the Tuesday and Wednesday total. Can we talk about that?
Well, before you go there, Gary, is there, from council's point of view, when looking at what Budget Finance has put out in the projected rates, hearing David talk a little bit about the 8th day, is it the 8th day rate that you're referring
Yeah, I was
to?
comparing the 8 day to a hang tag that's used by a bunch of owners, yeah.
And looking at that, it's $3.50 on the meters per hour, which came out of Budget Finance. Is there any, using my Italian mother's word, is there any agita associated with, which is heartburn? Sorry, Italian for heartburn. Is there any heartburn with any of those rates as a?
Which one in particular?
I'm looking at the 175, the 225, the 300, 100, like on the projected rate structures.
I don't think any of them on the face of it are completely unreasonable. $30 to park for a day. Some people might say it's steep if it's a Wednesday, or but it's not unheard of, to do that.
And that's a 24-hour.
It's 24 hours.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So if I could say, Mr. Mayor, so for the hang tags for the property owners at $150, they have been $150 since 2012. If you look at the cost of living between now and then, and you take that out, roughly it's $50. $150 14 years later or 12 years later is now worth $200. So we're splitting that and only going to $175 instead of taking it up and keeping up with the cost of living.
Right. Yeah, and there's those of us that live live here year round, or we're not renting our homes. We don't need a hang tag.
We have parking.
And it's a lot of the renters or is that also the business?
The business goes
That's the next line down. There's property
Goes from
owner,
250.
and then their
Goes
business
from
owner, employee.
200
to
225. Okay. All right.
I mean, we still give our homeowners a break. I mean, but that's always been the culture here.
Yeah.
If you're a homeowner, you get a break.
And we are. We're giving.
All right, so I'm not hearing any objections to actually the rates to move forward into the next month because we're going to a vote.
Yeah, we can get to a vote on that later.
And if the variance between the projected and the current can be applied to the exact number, 1.5 or what, Gary, what number was that in the parking?
And I came up with 1.5, but you had 1.6, but maybe you're doing it in your
If
head.
I do the 1.5, that means that 185 is actually 270.
Yeah.
So I just want to point that out. Okay. If it's
Could be.
could be. All right.
Yeah.
So
All right,
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Let's talk about Tuesday, Wednesday. Commissioner Perkins.
Yeah, what you have here is basically someone has just made a wild ass guess that 25% of the parking spaces might be realistic, and extend that out for 34 days at $3 an hour for 6 hours from 5 to 11, you get $223,380. There is absolutely no basis for that that calculation. It's just a guess. What's much better is the data that was produced by the parking enforcement folks that looked at revenues generated from 5 to 11 p.m. On Thursday and Sunday. Those are fairly close, I would think, to what you would expect in terms of experience for Tuesday and Wednesday if you start making people pay. Now, I had an exchange of emails about this topic, and the town manager said that there was some thought that there would be some additional day parkers that would buy a daily rate and therefore it would add to the revenue. What we came up with when you look just at the Thursday and the Sunday revenues, you come up with about half of this amount of money, not 223, but somewhere closer around the 110 or 115. That seems to me to be a lot more realistic and certainly more conservative than using this, which is really just kind of a guess.
So what we did was we looked at 25% of the 1,400 parking spots in town for those 2 evenings. And we took that, and as Commissioner Persinger said, we multiplied that out. Then you had asked us, Mr. Mayor, to look at Thursdays and Sundays between the hours of 5 and 11 revenue, and we did. But what the parking department didn't do was look at folks that bought a day pass on Thursdays and on Sundays. All she did was look at anybody that purchased anything after 5 p.m. and before 11 p.m. So if you bought something from 3 in the afternoon on a Sunday to 10 at night, that wasn't counted in her calculations. And if I didn't explain that correctly in my email, Commissioner Persinger, I apologize. But so we're missing some revenue there. I believe that the parking department just went from anybody that bought from 5 to 11, after 5 and before 11. It didn't count anybody that bought before 5 that went into 11. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're missing some of that.
I understand that, but I don't think there's very much there. I mean, if somebody shows up at 3 o'clock, unless they're going to stay all the way till 11 o'clock, they're not going to buy a day pass. They're just going to buy hourly parking. I just don't think there's much additional revenue in terms of buying something other than hourly parking. If somebody's going to buy if somebody shows up at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or Wednesday, they might buy a day pass. So you might be picking up a little bit, but if they were planning to stay for the entire day, I just don't think behavior is going to change all that much in terms of people paying for parking. Certainly not double what you came up with when you looked at what was purchased in terms of hourly parking between 5 and 11.
As we move forward, well, it's a dartboard right now because we don't know what those numbers are going to be on Tuesday, Wednesday. I understand
I can
we're
weigh on that too, but
no, you don't have to. So if 220 is high, and Gary, you're around what, 110 is what you're
Hey,
guessing?
110, 115, something like that.
Right. Let's put a place marker. Let's put it at the 110 level in terms of the budget, so that being conservative on that, and we'll verify that 185 becomes 270.
Yes, sir.
So that those two are, then we're at 380 towards our 495 negative variance, right?
So 110 instead of 223.
Yes, we'll go to 110 or 223.
All right.
Is that all right for this conversation? Okay, happy hour's almost over. So the parking tickets, and this is conversations that we had in town, and I just want you to, we had this in Baltimore City where the parking ticket was almost the same amount as the parking for the day. And so you'd have people who would just roll the dice and say, if I get a ticket, it's the same amount, we're close enough, and if I get 1 out of 2 days, I get it. So it should be.
Same in New York City, by the way.
Is it really?
Mhm.
To me, there should be some multiple of what the daily parking would cost for the parking ticket. Or am I looking at it wrong? Because it's not just the dailies, because if it's 3, if I only do it for an hour or 2 hours, I still pay $30, right?
Well, I mean, it also captures things like an expired meter where you ran 5 minutes late too, right? So it's not, it's not always, but the 30 to 45 does not seem unreasonable to me, because to your point, people will roll the dice on the daily parking fee,
And with the use of, bless you, the use of Park Mobile, you get an alert 15 minutes before it expires, and you can do it remotely, so you don't have to, I got stuck, couldn't get across the street.
So Gary, any thoughts on the parking tickets?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, I'm fine with that too. All right, there's a movie that this reminds me of, and I think it's called Dave. All right, now we're at 480,000. Let's jump down to the license type amounts. Where's the agita?
2788 to 2872 is the same number to me. Yeah, that's it changed at $84. That's nothing.
Okay.
In town, obviously, is paying, for the small ones. Yeah, I think we graduated that pretty good. When was the last time we moved the commercial small town?
The reason this was put out here is because last year at this time, we did a rate increase across the board on our businesses and rental licenses. And it had been quite a few years, and it was presented that we hit everybody out of the blue with, after over a decade, a 28% increase. All we did is take things up 3%, basically the cost of living, so that we're not hitting everybody 5, 10, 15 years down the road with a huge amount. We're having them help us and we help them.
Right, we get criticized if we wait 10 years and then raise it one time. It's like, oh, you put up a gigantic amount.
Correct, sir.
So we're better off doing whatever COLA is that year. So were we using 3? We're using 4, 5?
We used 3.
So it's 3.4, I think, was COLA, right?
Right, I just did 3%.
We just did 3.
So, can I make?
Yep,
The
go ahead.
only question I had is, why increase the food and beverage seat fee by 50%? I mean, it turns out that that increase then represents about, 60% or more of the overall increase. Why are we hitting that one type of business so hard?
Why is everyone looking at me?
I mean,
No, I'm kidding. So the conversation around that is, what's the right number, Gary? I think that it was at 6 for many years, and you see it at 8. We love the restaurants that are here in town. They are, if the 56 and 9, when you look at that, that's $65,000. Are they paying enough, or should it be more? There's arguments, and I've had conversations with almost all of the business owners, all the restaurant owners, that the revenue that we generate on one side from the parking, it's partially due because the bars and restaurants are in the town, so that's how we're making our money. I look at it going, it's not a big fee. Somebody like Jimmy O'Connor owns Woody's, has a 100-person restaurant, that's taken it from $800 to $1,200. So it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. But if you think it's too much of a step and we should go to 10 or something else, we absolutely can.
I think 10, it's a little bit of a jump, but it's cost of living. Pretty
Well,
good.
I mean, it's still 20, that's 25%. I just don't feel like there's a good justification for it.
So-
I mean, everything else is going up by 3, and that one, as it shows here, would go up by 50%. And now we're backing it down to 25%. So what's the rationale?
So I would, as Commissioner Jasinski said earlier, we have spent a lot on public safety, right? And the reason we spend a lot on public safety is because we have an active nightlife. And that's the bottom line. And part of paying for those extra police officers, this is one way to pay for the extra public safety. That is 4 after 1 o'clock in the evening, when our chief is standing in a parking lot trying to get folks to leave, and we're locking people up until 3 in the morning. And the reason we're doing that is because we have an active nightlife. And that's
true. It's a fair statement. I mean, we can debate that, because we're looking at 28,000. Should that the difference be only 14,000 or 28 or?
Well,
I'm always in favor of a gradual change as opposed to a bigger change.
All right, if you kept the fees as is, then we would be at $522,000 or $27,000 over where we want. So I think if the food and beverage base is the only real heartburn that we have here, and we move it.
Food and beverage seat.
I'm sorry, seat. Then taking it from 8 to 9 would take that take it down 21,000. So we'd end up being right at 500.
Yeah. fine either way you want to do it. I mean, I kind of get it. I get the rationale. So either way you want to do it.
I do feel that the jump to 12 is too much. I would support 10.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Gary, this is your decision.
No,
No, it's your, no.
it should be 25.
All right, so Gary wants to be 25 per seat.
Hold on, Monty's calling me.
10 is good.
If my
10's
math,
good.
if my math, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
10 is good for me.
All right, so, if we take it from 8 to 10, then we're looking at taking 14 off here, 28, so we're at 508, roughly. And that's assuming the 270 is right. All right, so let's work the budget through with those fee see what we come back to.
Yes, sir.
We did our
All right.
math right.
Any council, any other comments?
Yeah, I have one other question or comment.
Go
Do
ahead.
you have something from the public or?
Yeah, we do. We're not done yet. But Jim, well, go ahead, Gary, finish your comment and then we'll.
Okay, well, there's the question of, this goes back to the issue of the rainy day fund and where that money is invested, the amount of money that's invested with Brown Advisory. Do we leave it with Brown Advisory and subject it to market risk, or do we pull it out and put it into a more standard savings account where the principal is guaranteed and the earnings that would be gained from that principal would vary? Sometimes could be very low if the interest rates are very low, but could be substantially higher if we continue to experience the kind of interest rates we have now. I mean, it's basically, is that money an investment, or is it just a pot of money that we need to make sure that we have that guaranteed principal because it is an essential part of our rainy day fund?
Great question. I would expand that to all of our investments, not just the rainy day fund, as a conversational. I think that's it's a separate conversation for potentially to have with the investment committee and with budget and finance possibly weighing in. And I also believe that the RFP that we put out this year, it's due back at the end of January.
It's due back, yes, in February 1st.
Yeah, February 1st. All right, so we'll have more information on the potential of a non-risk interest income after we get some of those proposals back. But I personally, Gary, have no problem moving it into a less risky investment vehicle, but I don't know if we need to do that here.
And the investment committee seeks input from council as to how they would like the investment portfolio to proceed. Currently, all investments are within the standards already set by council.
Okay. So maybe one of the things we'll definitely have, before this, we actually vote on the budget for 2025, we will have proposals in from various financial institutions, and we as council can also look into some of how we want the placement of those funds and the potential effects on interest income versus unrealized gains and realized gains. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, you gotta get up, Jim. Another step.
This is in conjunction with what Gary just said about increase. You have different ratios for all these increases. Again, it seems like you're only raising 25, but then the percent is going to be, you raise it 20%, sometimes you raise it 30%, sometimes you raise it 16%. That's just notification of what you did. And so, and the other thing is, these parking tickets, does that also count for people parked illegally?
So is it based upon the hours? It also, if I park in front of a fire hydrant or if I park in front of
So the parking fine is different than parking at a fire hydrant.
So this is just, you didn't pay your meter?
Yes.
The $30? Base.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they come, they run your tag. You're not in the system through Park Mobile. You're not in T2 system. You don't have a hang tag. You get a parking ticket.
So if you're parked
Did
illegally,
I-
how much is that fine?
And if you're parked illegally, what is the fine and where those funds go?
I'd have to go back and.
Everything goes into parking tickets.
So,
Different fine now.
Different fines for different violations.
all right. Any other, yes. Anybody here from, Kate's got the resting face of, I don't want to be here anymore.
Anybody online that wants to?
Anybody, is there anybody online that wants to have input?
Comment? Okay.
This is-
Anybody there? No.
Yeah.
I see Gary.
All right,
Hello?
Talk.
go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, David Moskowitz, live in Dewey Beach, also a CFA chartered financial analyst and CPA. And what was said was totally incorrect. The general fund that Brown invests in is a treasury product that the town, under the town's parameters and direction. And for the last year, if you're looking at it, it's 4.6% interest it earned. So to characterize that as risky, it would actually be more risky to put it in like a Fulton or Community Bank, where it pays less in interest. Plus, you have an FDIC type risk, where if the bank goes belly up, the town could lose all the money. That's why in the past the town used to keep like, I guess you have about 1.3 million. You might have to have like 5 or 7 bank books or accounts to keep the money, and it was very arduous. So to say Brown Advisory investment is risky is not true at all. What actually is risky is to not invest it in T-bills, which is a very safe product, with the town determining the duration and understanding about inflation risk, because the purpose is you want to beat inflation. If you put it in a bank account and inflation is more than that bank account, you'd be forsaking money. And I understand you're worried about the accounting of it, but you need to look at the actual return of it. So it would just be crazy to take the money from an investment advisor who've served the town for maybe, 8, 9 years and is returning 5% and just put it at a local bank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Times where there was a negative rate on the short-term funds, and that money is not all invested in T-bills. Some of it is in a fixed income account. And that entire account was changed at Brown Advisory's discretion. And we showed up with a fairly negative result as a result of that transaction. So again, it comes back to the question of, is this really an investment or is it not?
All right. I want to thank everybody. Oh, wait, I got to get back to the agenda.
Comment.
Any other comments? All right. With these proposed changes, it looks like we'd be moving towards a balanced budget. We've got some answers that need to go, some answers. And we will have those before the next meeting. Comments? Town manager.
No, I'd just like to thank Sheena for putting this together and everybody's patience with today's meeting. And the chiefs also put up a more detailed analysis of this last year, and that will be posted online on the town website, and it'll be mailed out to each one of you.
Chief?
Ditto.
Commissioner Barrett?
No comments at this time.
Commissioner Gibbings?
I want to say happy anniversary to the chief, and I'm so glad we could celebrate with this long, exciting meeting, your special day.
Thank you so much.
I'm pleased that we potentially are going to be in a position to pass a budget earlier and easier than we've ever been.
Great work.
Excellent.
Commissioner Persinger, sitting in the
I
dark.
have about 20 minutes of notes I'd like to go through. If you
All right, go right ahead, sir.
I have no comments.
I want to, my only comments, I wanted to thank the town for, a lot of hard work on the budget. Well, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what we had to what is now, it's a much different vehicle. And it's going to continue to improve as we move forward. But it's light years ahead of what we used to have. And I also want to thank everyone here that pushed, for a 4-hour meeting. That unfortunately we don't, since I've become mayor, that hasn't been the situation, but it happens every once in a while. So with that, can I have a motion to
motion.
Or to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Turn the light on before you walk out, Gary.
What's that?
It's very dark behind you. Make sure you can see where you're going.
I will try. I have my hands out. So long.